Welcome, my night wanderers. Tonight, we step inside the shadowed halls, crumbling pews, and silent sanctuaries of Louisiana's most haunted churches, places where the faithful once prayed, and now, the departed linger. Some churches are empty by day, yet when night falls, strange bells ring, echoing through the air, with no human hand to toll them. Whispered voices drift from empty chapels, shadowy figures glide down aisles, and the very walls seem to breathe with secrets of the past. So light a candle, tread softly over the creaking floorboards, and join me as we explore the 25 most haunted churches in Louisiana where bells ring by themselves. St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans stands as one of the city's most iconic landmarks. Its spires reaching skyward above Jackson Square and its centuries-old facade, reflecting a rich history steeped in faith, culture, and legend. Constructed in the 18th century, the cathedral has witnessed the evolution of New Orleans through colonial change, wars, fires, and floods. By day, it is a place of devotion and architectural grandeur, drawing tourists, parishioners, and history enthusiasts who admire its intricate stained glass, soaring arches, and ornate altars. Yet, beyond its beauty lies a reputation for the uncanny. Visitors and locals alike report experiences that hint at a supernatural presence. From ghostly figures in the upper galleries to bells ringing at midnight with no explanation, and shadowy shapes gliding along the aisles, vanishing before anyone can reach them. Among the most commonly reported phenomena are the apparitions seen in the cathedral's upper galleries. Witnesses have noted the figures moving slowly along the railings, pausing to gaze down at the nave below, or gesturing as if conducting a ritual no longer visible to the living. Some observers claim that the ghosts are entirely unaware of the living, moving with purpose and solemnity, as if fulfilling duties left unfinished centuries ago. The presence of these figures is often accompanied by a chilling sensation, a sudden awareness that one is not alone in the vast, echoing spaces of the cathedral. Bells ringing at midnight is another mysterious phenomenon associated with St. Louis Cathedral. Numerous visitors have reported hearing the deep, resonant tones of the cathedral's bells when the tower is otherwise empty and no scheduled services are taking place. The sound is often described as startling yet melodic, carrying across Jackson Square and echoing through the surrounding streets. Some claim that the bells ring in intervals, as though marking an event unseen, or in response to the presence of the living within the cathedral. The origin of these midnight chimes remains unexplained, adding to the cathedral's aura of mystery and reinforcing its reputation as a site where the past continues to whisper into the present. Shadowy shapes moving along the aisles of the cathedral have also been reported by numerous visitors. Observers describe fleeting silhouettes gliding across pews or along the walls, vanishing when approached. Some appear humanoid, with indistinct features and dark outlines, while others seem more ephemeral, as if composed of mist or shifting light. Witnesses often feel a mixture of curiosity and unease, the sensation that these figures are aware of their presence, yet indifferent to the living. The shadows sometimes appear near the altar, the side chapels, or the old galleries, reinforcing the impression that the cathedral is alive with unseen activity long after the congregation has left. One memorable account comes from a parishioner who attended an evening service late in the year. As the last candle flickered in the dim light, the individual glanced upward and saw a figure in flowing robes walking along the upper gallery. The figure moved deliberately, its gaze fixed downward, and for a moment seemed to pause as if acknowledging the worshippers below. When the parishioner looked again, the figure had vanished, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps and a sudden chill in the air. Moments later, the bells of the cathedral rang, though no one was present in the tower, and no service had been scheduled. This combination of visual, auditory, and sensory phenomena left the witness with a profound sense of awe and lingering curiosity. Historical context provides insight into why St. Louis Cathedral might be a focal point for paranormal activity. For over 250 years, it has been a center of faith, ceremony, and community gathering. Countless baptisms, weddings, funerals, and nightly prayers have filled its walls with devotion, emotion, and ritual. The cathedral has endured fires, renovations, and the passage of time. Yet these events, combined with the intensity of human emotion within its walls, may have left a lingering imprint. Some paranormal researchers suggest that the apparitions, shadowy figures, and unexplained bell chimes are manifestations of this accumulated spiritual energy, echoes of centuries of devotion resonating through the building. Investigations into St. Louis Cathedral's unexplained phenomena have yielded intriguing results. Cameras have occasionally captured translucent figures in the galleries or moving along aisles, while audio recordings have picked up faint footfalls, whispered voices, or the sound of bells when no one is present. Visitors report sudden chills or the feeling of being observed in areas that appear empty. Though skeptics may attribute these occurrences to natural acoustics, light effects, or psychological suggestion, the consistency of independent reports over many decades suggests that the cathedral holds an enduring connection to something beyond the tangible. Even for daytime visitors, the cathedral exudes a presence that is difficult to ignore. The combination of shadowed corners, towering arches, and sunlight filtering through stained glass creates shifting patterns of light and dark, sometimes giving the impression of movement where none exists. Many feel that the weight of history, devotion, and loss is almost palpable, a subtle reminder that the lives and rituals of past congregants remain intertwined with the present. St. Louis Cathedral's reputation as a haunted site is both respected and approached with reverence. The apparitions in the galleries, the unexpected ringing of bells, and shadowy movements along the aisles are rarely described as threatening. Instead, they are often interpreted as reminders of the cathedral's enduring spirit, a bridge between past and present that invites contemplation rather than fear. Visitors leave with a sense of connection, aware that the cathedral is more than stone and glass. It is a vessel of memory, faith, and perhaps the lingering presence of those who walked its halls long before. St. John the Baptist Church in Prairieville stands as a quiet testament to faith and history. Its weathered steeple rising above the surrounding countryside and its aged brick walls holding centuries of devotion and community memory. Established in the 19th century, the church has long served as a spiritual center for the town, hosting baptisms, weddings, funerals, and countless regular services that shape the rhythm of daily life. By day, the church exudes a serene charm, with sunlight streaming through its old stained glass windows, illuminating the worn pews and polished wooden floors. Yet, as evening falls and the town quiets, locals and visitors alike report strange occurrences that hint at a presence beyond the living, from phantom tolling bells to spectral clergy and flickering lights that defy explanation. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at St. John the Baptist Church is the tolling of bells during hours when the building is empty. Residents have described hearing the deep, resonant chimes echoing across the surrounding fields in the late night or early morning, even when no service or ceremony is scheduled. The sound is often slow and deliberate, carrying a sense of solemnity and weight, as if marking a moment of remembrance or warning. Witnesses frequently report that the tolls seem to come from the main bell tower, yet investigations find no one present, no mechanism active, and no logical explanation for the mysterious ringing. The sound lingers in the air, a haunting reminder of the church's long history and the lives that have passed within its walls. Spectral sightings are another frequent experience for those exploring the church grounds. Some locals have glimpsed the figure of a priest walking solemnly along the perimeter or moving slowly through the interior during the evening hours. Witnesses describe the apparition as wearing traditional clerical robes, sometimes carrying a book or gesturing as if performing a ritual. The figure often appears and vanishes without warning, sometimes observed in full view for several seconds, other times only glimpsed from the corner of the eye. Those who have encountered the specter report feeling a mix of reverence and unease, sensing that the apparition is aware of the living but focused on duties unseen, perhaps continuing the spiritual work carried out long ago. Another phenomenon that captures attention is the flickering of lights within the church's old stained glass windows. Parishioners and visitors alike have reported seeing flashes of light that seem to move across the colored panes when the church is empty. These flickers often occur without wind, sunlight, or any electrical cause, as if the light itself is responding to a presence or energy unseen. Some witnesses suggest that the windows, depicting saints and biblical scenes, may serve as conduits for spiritual activity. Their illumination, revealing moments when the veil between the living and the dead feels thin. The combination of flickering colors, faint shadows, and the occasional tolling bell creates an atmosphere that is at once awe-inspiring and chilling. Auditory experiences accompany these visual phenomena. Beyond the tolling bells, some visitors report hearing faint footsteps echoing along the wooden floors when no one else is present, or the rustle of robes and pages turning as though a book of prayers were being read. Whispered words have been described, often indistinct but resembling portions of liturgy or soft instructions. These sounds are subtle, yet unmistakable, adding to the sense that the church continues to resonate with activity, even in the absence of the living. The combination of visual, auditory, and sensory experiences makes St. John the Baptist Church a site where the past feels extraordinarily present. One account comes from a local who visited the church late one evening to collect her thoughts. As she stood in the nave, she noticed a faint glow of flickering light traveling across a stained glass window. Glancing up, she saw the figure of a priest slowly descending the aisle, his robes brushing the floor. The figure paused briefly before her, bowed slightly, and continued toward the altar, vanishing before she could approach. Moments later, the distant tolling of the bell echoed across the grounds, though no one else was in the building. The combination of light, movement, and sound left a lasting impression, instilling both awe and a profound sense of the church's enduring presence. The history of St. John the Baptist Church provides context for these unusual occurrences. The church has stood for over a century, surviving storms, renovations, and generations of parishioners who brought both joy and grief within its walls. Countless ceremonies, prayers, and rituals have been performed here, and the emotional intensity of these events may have left an enduring mark on the building itself. Paranormal researchers suggest that the ghostly priest, the tolling bells, and the flickering stained glass may represent residual energy, echoes of devotion, and spiritual activity that continue to interact with the living. The church's combination of architecture, history, and human emotion creates conditions ripe for experiences that bridge the ordinary and the supernatural. Investigations into the church's paranormal activity have yielded intriguing observations. Cameras and video equipment occasionally capture fleeting figures or shifting shadows, while audio devices sometimes pick up unexplained footsteps, rustling, or distant bell chimes. Temperature fluctuations and sudden chills are commonly reported, particularly near the altar or in the aisles. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to natural causes such as drafts, reflections, or expectation, the consistency and longevity of reports suggest that something unusual continues to occur at St. John the Baptist Church. St. Joseph Church in Baton Rouge is a historic and revered place of worship. Its stately brick facade and tall steeples standing as a testament to centuries of faith and community. Founded in the 19th century, the church has long been a center for parishioners seeking spiritual guidance, comfort, and fellowship. Over the years, countless baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily prayers have filled its interior with devotion, creating an enduring atmosphere steeped in reverence and tradition. While the church is a place of solace during the day, as night falls and the surrounding streets quiet, St. Joseph has become the site of numerous reports of unexplained phenomena, from shadowy figures kneeling in empty pews to the sudden tolling of bells and icy gusts that pass through the sanctuary for no discernible reason. One of the most commonly reported experiences involves shadowy figures seen kneeling in pews long after the congregation has departed. Parishioners and visitors alike have described observing dark silhouettes occupying empty rows, as though engaged in silent prayer. These figures are often vaguely humanoid, with indistinct features, yet their posture and presence are unmistakable. Witnesses frequently report a feeling of reverence or calm accompanying these sightings, as if the spirits are continuing a devotion begun during their earthly lives. In some cases, the figures seem to bow their heads in unison with the living, responding to prayers or rituals as though the boundary between the present and past worshippers is thin. The tolling of bells is another mysterious phenomenon at St. Joseph Church. Several parishioners have reported hearing the deep, resonant chimes of the church bells during hours when the building is empty and no service is scheduled. The sound often emerges without warning, filling the surrounding streets and echoing through the night air. Many describe the tolling as deliberate, measured, and solemn, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition and ritual. Investigations into these occurrences typically find no one present in the bell tower and no mechanical cause, leaving witnesses to wonder whether the church itself maintains a spiritual presence that continues to mark time and ceremony even in the absence of living caretakers. Visitors also frequently report sudden, icy gusts passing through the church, sometimes concentrated in certain areas, like the nave or near the altar. These chills are described as sharp and unexpected, often coinciding with other phenomena such as the appearance of shadowy figures or the tolling of bells. The gusts are sometimes felt as localized drops in temperature, enveloping only a single person, or as a broader, almost tangible draft that sweeps through the sanctuary. The sensation often evokes a mixture of awe and unease, reinforcing the idea that the church is not only a place of devotion, but also a site where unseen energies continue to move and interact with the living. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bells. Some visitors report faint whispers echoing along the aisles, often resembling fragments of prayers, hymn lyrics, or softly spoken guidance. Footsteps on wooden floors are also commonly described, yet no one is visible, and the sounds appear to move with the observer. The combination of visual, auditory, and sensory experiences, shadowy figures, ghostly bells, whispers, and icy drafts creates a multi-layered environment in which the past seems to bleed into the present. One particularly compelling account comes from a parishioner who stayed late after an evening prayer service. As she knelt in quiet reflection, she noticed a faint outline of a figure kneeling several pews ahead, its form indistinct but unmistakably human. Moments later, she felt a sudden chill pass over her, accompanied by the tolling of bells that had not rung in over an hour. The figure did not move toward her, but seemed focused on a silent act of devotion, bowing its head as though engaged in prayer. When she finally stood and turned to approach, the shadow had vanished, leaving only the residual cold and the echo of the bells in the empty church. The history of St. Joseph Church provides insight into why these phenomena may occur. Over the course of more than a century, the church has been the setting for intense religious activity, emotional ceremonies, and communal gatherings. The repeated acts of devotion, combined with the grief, joy, and solemnity expressed by generations of parishioners, may have left a lingering imprint on the sanctuary. Paranormal researchers suggest that the shadowy figures, tolling bells, and icy gusts could represent residual spiritual energy or the continuation of devotional acts beyond the physical world, echoing through time in a place deeply charged by faith. Investigations into the church's supernatural occurrences have yielded intriguing results. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint footsteps, rustling robes, or whispers that correspond with reported sightings. Thermal imaging and environmental sensors have documented localized cold spots and sudden temperature drops in areas frequently associated with apparitions. Video equipment has sometimes captured indistinct, semi-transparent figures kneeling or moving in pews, while skeptics argue that drafts, lighting, or psychological expectation could account for some experiences. The consistency of reports over decades suggests that St. Joseph Church continues to be a site of genuine unexplained phenomena. Even during daytime visits, the atmosphere of the church carries a subtle weight, a sense that the sanctuary is not merely a physical space, but a repository of memory, devotion, and presence. Sunlight filtering through stained glass windows casts colored patterns across pews and floors, often creating shifting shadows that seem almost animate. Parishioners describe feeling the enduring presence of those who worshipped before, a comforting or haunting sensation, depending on the circumstances. St. Michael's Church in Convent, Louisiana, is a historic landmark that has served its community for over a century. Nestled amid towering oaks and Spanish moss, the church stands as a symbol of faith, history, and continuity. Its whitewashed walls, classic steeple, and intricately designed stained glass windows reflect both the devotion of its parishioners and the care of generations who have maintained the sacred space. By day, St. Michael's is a place of serene worship, a destination for parishioners attending Mass and for visitors appreciating its architectural beauty and quiet reverence. Yet, after dusk, the church has garnered a reputation for experiences that suggest the presence of spirits lingering long after their earthly lives have ended. Parishioners and locals report ghostly encounters, unexplained bell tolling, and whispers that seem to call out the names of those walking the church grounds. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at St. Michael's Church involves the sound of bells ringing in the middle of the night. Multiple witnesses have described hearing the deep, resonant tolling of the church bells long after the last scheduled service. These bells are said to ring deliberately and rhythmically, filling the surrounding quiet of the town with a haunting melody. No caretakers or parishioners are present during these instances, and investigations often find the bell tower empty, the mechanisms at rest. Some visitors interpret the sound as a spectral echo of past masses or as a signal from the spirits of former parishioners who continue to engage with the sacred space. The midnight tolling is frequently accompanied by a heavy sense of presence, a feeling that someone or something is observing from the shadows. Visual phenomena are equally striking. Witnesses have reported seeing shadowy figures moving quietly along the aisles, kneeling in pews, or standing near the altar. These figures often appear semi-transparent, dressed in period clothing reminiscent of earlier generations of worshippers. Some observers claim to have glimpsed multiple apparitions simultaneously, silently performing rituals such as crossing themselves, bowing their heads, or gazing toward the crucifix. Despite their spectral appearance, these figures are often described as peaceful, their movements deliberate and calm, creating an impression of devotion that transcends death. Many parishioners report feeling watched by these presences, not in a threatening manner, but with a sense of being accompanied by the faithful spirits of past generations. Auditory experiences complement these visual sightings. Whispered voices are frequently reported, sometimes calling out the names of visitors or parishioners. These whispers are subtle, often barely audible, yet unmistakable to those present. Some visitors describe the sound as resembling prayers recited softly, perhaps from old hymnals or personal devotion. Footsteps on wooden floors and the faint rustling of robes have also been noted, even when no one is visibly moving within the church. The combination of these sensory experiences, bells, whispers, footsteps, creates a layered and immersive atmosphere in which the past seems to linger palpably, reminding visitors of the human lives once connected to the space. One memorable account comes from a visitor who stayed late to explore the church after an evening service. As she walked down the main aisle, she felt a sudden chill and noticed faint flickers of light reflecting from the stained glass windows. Moments later, she heard the distant ringing of bells, echoing across the empty nave. Looking toward the altar, she saw the outline of a figure kneeling in prayer, its features indistinct but its posture unmistakably devout. When she approached, the figure slowly faded into the shadows, leaving behind a lingering sense of calm and reverence. Later, as she exited the church, she realized she could still hear soft whispers. Though the doors were closed and the building otherwise empty, the church's long history offers context for these unexplained occurrences. St. Michael's has been a site of devotion and community for more than 100 years, with countless ceremonies, baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses, imbuing the space with deep emotional resonance. Many of the earliest parishioners were devoted to the church, not only in life, but also in death, leaving behind a legacy of love, reverence, and community. Paranormal researchers suggest that the apparitions, bell tolling, and whispers may be manifestations of residual spiritual energy, echoes of devotion that remain tied to the church itself. The combination of sacred rituals, intense human emotion, and historical continuity creates conditions in which the past seems to reach into the present, interacting subtly with those who visit the church at night. Investigations of St. Michael's Church have yielded intriguing evidence. Audio devices occasionally capture faint whispers or the tolling of bells when no mechanical explanation exists. Video recordings sometimes reveal shadowy figures moving along pews or near the altar, only to vanish upon closer inspection. Temperature fluctuations and sudden cold spots have been documented, particularly near areas associated with apparitions or where witnesses reported ghostly activity. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to natural acoustics, drafts, or psychological suggestion, the frequency and consistency of reports over decades suggests that the church holds a unique connection to the spiritual realm. Even for daytime visitors, the presence of history and devotion is palpable. Sunlight filtering through the stained glass casts colorful reflections across the pews and floors, sometimes creating the illusion of movement or shifting figures. The quiet murmur of prayers, the scent of aged wood, and the overall atmosphere contribute to a sense that the church is not simply a building, but a vessel for memory, faith, and lingering energy. Visitors often leave with a profound respect for both the physical space and the spirits said to inhabit it, sensing that the church is alive with the devotion of past generations. Our Lady of Prompt Succor in New Orleans is a historic church renowned not only for its spiritual significance, but also for its reputation as a place where the veil between the living and the unseen seems unusually thin. Established in the early 19th century, the church has been a focal point for parishioners seeking comfort, guidance, and protection, its name itself invoking divine assistance in times of need. Visitors are drawn by its impressive architecture, soaring ceilings, and intricate stained glass windows. But as the sun sets and the city quiets, the church has become known for experiences that suggest the lingering presence of those who have long departed. Phantom figures near the altar, bells ringing on stormy nights, and inexplicable sensations of cold and presence have made Our Lady of Prompt Succor a site of fascination for paranormal enthusiasts, locals, and devout worshippers alike. Among the most frequently reported phenomena are the ghostly figures seen near the altar. Witnesses often describe translucent silhouettes moving slowly across the sanctuary, some appearing to kneel in prayer, while others stand as if guarding the sacred space. These apparitions are frequently observed during evening hours, especially when the church is empty, their presence creating an unmistakable sense of solemnity and devotion. Parishioners and visitors have noted that the figures sometimes resemble clergy or parish members from earlier generations, dressed in the period attire of the 19th and early 20th centuries. The apparitions are often described as peaceful, their movements deliberate and respectful, almost as if the spirits are continuing rituals and prayers from their mortal lives. The church bells are another source of mystery. On stormy nights, even when no services are scheduled and the church is empty, the bells are reported to toll, resonating across the streets of New Orleans. Residents and visitors describe the sound as deep and mournful, carrying a weight that seems to echo the city's history of devotion, struggle, and resilience. The tolling often coincides with sudden changes in the atmosphere inside the church, a drop in temperature, the sensation of being watched, or the faint outline of figures moving near the altar. Despite investigations, the source of the bell ringing remains unexplained. With no caretaker present and no mechanical or electrical cause found, many interpret the phenomenon as a spectral echo of past rituals or a message from unseen guardians maintaining watch over the sacred grounds. Visitors also report a range of sensory experiences beyond the visual and auditory. Sudden chills, often localized near the altar or the front pews, are a common occurrence. Sometimes accompanied by the sensation of being gently observed, the air seems to shift in temperature and density, heightening the sense that something unseen is present. Some report faint whispers, often unintelligible at first, but occasionally resembling fragments of prayers, names, or devotional phrases. Footsteps are also frequently noted along the wooden floors, although no one else is present in the church. The combination of ghostly figures, ringing bells, and these sensory experiences creates an atmosphere that feels deeply alive with history, memory, and spiritual energy. One notable account comes from a visitor who stayed late after an evening service. As rain lashed against the windows and thunder echoed through the city, she observed faint shadows moving near the altar. At the same time, the bells rang unexpectedly, their tolling deep and deliberate, filling the empty church with sound that seemed almost purposeful. As she watched, a figure appeared to kneel at the foot of the altar, bowing its head in silent devotion. The shadow remained for several minutes before slowly fading into the darkness, leaving behind only a lingering chill and the echo of the bells. The visitor described a profound sense of awe and reverence, as though she had witnessed a bridge between the living and the departed, an unbroken chain of faith spanning centuries. Historical context offers some insight into the haunting reputation of Our Lady of Prompt Succor. The church has endured storms, renovations, and generations of parishioners who have poured their devotion into its walls. Countless ceremonies, baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses have filled the building with emotional intensity. Paranormal researchers suggest that the apparitions, tolling bells, and sudden chills may be residual energy left behind by those acts of devotion, a spiritual imprint that continues to interact with the living. The combination of sacred rituals, human emotion, and architectural resonance may create conditions where the past manifests in subtle but unmistakable ways. Investigations into the paranormal activity at the church have produced intriguing observations. Cameras and video equipment occasionally capture fleeting figures near the altar or along the aisles, while audio devices sometimes record bells, tolling, or faint footsteps when no one is present. Thermal sensors detect localized cold spots that correspond with areas of reported activity. While skeptics may attribute these occurrences to drafts, building acoustics, or psychological expectation, the consistency of reports over decades lends credibility to the belief that the church holds a connection to something beyond the material realm. Even during daytime visits, the presence of history and devotion is tangible. Sunlight streaming through stained glass windows creates shifting patterns across pews and floors, sometimes giving the impression of movement where none exists. The faint scent of aged wood, candle wax, and incense adds to the sensory depth, evoking centuries of worship and community life. Visitors often feel a subtle sense of connection to those who have prayed within these walls before. A reminder that the church is not merely a physical structure, but a repository of faith, memory, and presence. St. Augustine Church in New Orleans stands as a striking emblem of history, faith, and architectural grandeur. Its stone facade and towering bell tower overlooking the vibrant streets of the French Quarter. Founded in the 18th century, it is the oldest African-American Catholic parish in the United States and has long been a spiritual and cultural cornerstone of the city. During the day, visitors marvel at its intricate stained glass windows, soaring arches, and the sense of calm that pervades its pews. However, as night falls and the crowds dissipate, St. Augustine takes on an entirely different presence, one that seems steeped in mystery and the lingering echoes of the past. Parishioners and locals alike report experiences that suggest the church is haunted. From ghostly singing emanating from the empty pews to shadowy figures near the bell tower that vanish when approached. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the sound of singing after dark. Visitors describe hearing soft, melodic voices drifting through the pews when the church is otherwise empty. The singing is often described as hymn-like, occasionally interspersed with whispers or murmured prayers. Witnesses claim that the voices seem to come from multiple directions at once, filling the nave with an ethereal harmony that is both beautiful and eerie. The sound has been reported at varying volumes, sometimes faint enough to make one doubt their own hearing. Other times so distinct that it seems as though a congregation is kneeling just beyond sight. The singing is often accompanied by a profound sense of presence, a feeling that the spirits of past parishioners have returned to continue their devotion. Shadowy figures are another common occurrence, frequently reported near the church's iconic bell tower. Visitors describe fleeting silhouettes that appear humanoid, sometimes tall and slender, moving slowly along the tower's base or climbing the stairs before disappearing altogether. These figures are typically seen in peripheral vision, vanishing when directly observed, leaving behind only a sudden chill or the faint echo of footsteps. Some witnesses interpret these apparitions as former clergy or parishioners, carrying on their duties even after death. The figures are often described as solemn rather than menacing, moving with purpose and a quiet dignity that reflects the church's spiritual legacy. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates a layered and immersive experience. Many visitors have reported feeling icy drafts or sudden temperature drops as the singing begins or as shadowy figures appear. Footsteps echoing across wooden floors, the rustle of robes, or faint creaking of pews accompany the presence of these spirits. Some witnesses have noted the fleeting scent of old wood, incense, or candle wax, as though remnants of centuries-old rituals have lingered in the air. Together, these sensory experiences make St. Augustine Church a place where the past feels vividly alive, bridging the gap between the living and those who have long departed. One particularly memorable account comes from a late-night visitor who had remained after a small evening service. As she walked down the empty aisle, she heard the soft strains of hymn-like singing coming from the pews ahead. Pausing, she realized the voices were not coming from any living person. Looking toward the bell tower through the open side door, she noticed a tall, dark figure moving slowly along the stairway, then disappearing into shadow as she approached. The combination of sound, sight, and temperature change left her with a profound sense of reverence and awe, a feeling that she had glimpsed the spiritual continuation of devotion long after the living had gone. Historical context helps explain why St. Augustine Church is a focal point for such phenomena. The church has been a center of faith for over 2 centuries, witnessing countless baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily prayers. Generations of parishioners devoted themselves to its services, and many remain buried in its adjacent grounds or nearby cemeteries. The intensity of human emotion, ritual, and devotion concentrated within the building over hundreds of years may have left a lasting imprint. Paranormal researchers suggest that the singing, shadowy figures, and unexplained drafts could be residual energy echoes of devotion that continue to interact with those who enter the church after dark. Investigations into St. Augustine Church's paranormal activity have yielded fascinating results. Video recordings occasionally capture blurred or semi-transparent figures near the pews or moving along the bell tower stairways. Audio devices have recorded faint singing or whispering when no one is present. Thermal imaging has detected sudden cold spots in areas correlated with sightings, while skeptics attribute these phenomena to acoustics, light effects, or expectation. The consistency and longevity of reports suggest that St. Augustine holds a connection to something beyond the ordinary. Even during daytime visits, the church exudes a quiet, almost contemplative presence. Sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows casts shifting colors across the pews, creating subtle illusions of movement or shadow. The scent of aged wood and wax lingers faintly in the air, a reminder of countless ceremonies performed over decades. Visitors often report feeling a sense of continuity, as though the spirits of past parishioners still linger, watching, praying, and preserving the sanctity of the space. St. Peter Catholic Church in New Iberia, Louisiana, is a historic place of worship that has stood as a beacon of faith for generations. Its stately brick, facade, tall steeple, and intricate stained glass windows reflect both the devotion of its parishioners and the rich history of the region. Founded in the 19th century, the church has been the setting for countless ceremonies, baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses imbuing the building with centuries of devotion and human emotion. During the day, St. Peter exudes serenity, offering parishioners a quiet place to pray and reflect. However, as night falls and the town quiets, the church takes on a mysterious aura. Locals report strange flickering lights in the windows, the tolling of bells when no one is present, and spectral figures moving silently through the aisles, giving the impression that St. Peter is not just a building of stone and wood, but a place where the past lingers in the present. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at St. Peter is the flickering of lights within its windows. Residents have described seeing sudden bursts of illumination that appear to move as though tracing the outlines of figures or following invisible paths. The lights are often observed late at night when no service or activity is scheduled, and they flicker in a way that cannot be attributed to passing cars or electrical faults. Witnesses say that the lights sometimes appear inside the nave, glowing softly before vanishing, creating the sense of an unseen presence moving through the church. For many, these lights are accompanied by an eerie feeling that someone or something is actively inhabiting the space, unseen yet undeniably present. The church bells have also become a source of intrigue and unease. Several locals report hearing the bells toll spontaneously, even during the quietest hours of the night. The sound is deep and resonant, echoing across the surrounding streets, and it often appears to have a deliberate, measured rhythm. Investigations into the occurrences reveal no mechanical or electrical cause, and the bell tower is typically empty when the ringing begins. Some suggest that the spontaneous tolling represents residual spiritual energy, an echo of past masses or rituals, while others believe it might be a warning or a signal from spirits still connected to the church. The sudden tolling often coincides with sightings of flickering lights or figures moving along the aisles, reinforcing the sense that the building is alive with unseen activity. Perhaps the most compelling experiences reported by visitors involve ghostly figures moving through the church's interior. These apparitions are often described as human-shaped silhouettes, semi-transparent, and sometimes resembling clergy or parishioners from previous centuries. Witnesses have observed figures kneeling in pews, walking along the aisles, or standing near the altar, only to vanish when approached. Some figures appear to be performing familiar gestures associated with prayer, such as crossing themselves, bowing, or clasping their hands, creating the impression that they are continuing their devotion long after death. Parishioners who have encountered these apparitions describe a mix of awe and unease, sensing that the spirits are both aware of their presence and respectful, maintaining the sanctity of the church without causing harm. Auditory phenomena often accompany these visual sightings. Faint whispers, footsteps, and the rustle of robes have been reported when no one is present. Some visitors claim to hear the soft murmur of prayers or hymn lyrics echoing through the nave, as though past masses are replaying themselves invisibly. The combination of sound, light, and movement creates a layered experience, making St. Peter Church a site where multiple senses converge, amplifying the impression that the spiritual and temporal realms overlap within its walls. One particularly striking account comes from a local resident who stayed after evening prayer to meditate in the nave. As she sat in quiet reflection, she noticed a flickering light moving along the aisle ahead, casting brief shadows across the pews. Moments later, the deep tolling of the bells reverberated through the empty church. She looked toward the altar and saw the vague outline of a figure kneeling, its posture solemn and reverent. When she rose to approach, the figure gradually dissolved into the darkness, leaving her with only the lingering sounds of the bells and a profound sense of awe. She described feeling both watched and comforted, as though the presence was protective rather than threatening. The church's history provides some context for these haunting experiences. St. Peter Catholic Church has served the New Iberia community for over a century, witnessing generations of devotion, celebration, and grief. Many of the earliest parishioners were deeply committed to the church, and their influence has left an enduring mark on the building. Paranormal researchers suggest that the flickering lights, spontaneous bell tolling, and spectral figures may be manifestations of residual energy or echoes of past devotion, lingering in the space where countless prayers and rituals have taken place. The architecture itself, with its high ceilings, wooden pews, and stained glass may amplify these occurrences, creating conditions where the unseen becomes perceptible to sensitive observers. Investigations into St. Peter's paranormal activity have yielded compelling, though often inconclusive, evidence. Video recordings sometimes capture semi-transparent figures moving along aisles or kneeling near the altar. Audio equipment has recorded unexplained bell tolling, footsteps, or faint whispers. Thermal sensors and environmental monitors detect sudden cold spots that correspond with reported sightings. While skeptics argue that drafts, reflections, or psychological expectation could explain some experiences, the frequency, consistency, and longevity of these reports suggest that the church is a site where the ordinary and extraordinary intersect. Even during daytime visits, the church maintains an aura of quiet reverence. Sunlight streaming through stained glass windows casts colorful patterns across the pews and floors, creating a subtle, almost shifting interplay of light and shadow. The scent of old wood, wax, and incense lingers faintly in the air, evoking centuries of worship and human emotion. Visitors often describe a sense of continuity, a feeling that the prayers, devotion, and presence of past parishioners remain alive within the walls. St. Patrick's Church in Lake Charles, Louisiana, stands as a venerable landmark of faith and history. Its towering steeple and traditional Gothic architecture reflecting over a century of devotion. Built in the late 19th century, the church has long served as a center of spiritual life, hosting countless masses, weddings, baptisms, and funerals. During the day, its polished wooden pews, stained glass windows, and quiet sanctuary provide visitors and parishioners with a place of reflection and prayer. Yet, as evening falls and the streets of Lake Charles grow still, the church has earned a reputation for experiences that suggest the presence of those who have long passed, a lingering spiritual energy that seems to animate the building long after the living have departed. Visitors report hearing footsteps in empty hallways, the tolling of bells at unexpected hours, and shadowy figures moving across the altar, creating an atmosphere that is both haunting and reverent. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at St. Patrick's involves the sound of footsteps echoing along empty hallways and wooden floors. Visitors describe hearing the soft, deliberate tread of someone walking, often just out of sight, accompanied by the subtle creaking of old floorboards. These sounds are sometimes reported when the church is completely unoccupied, and no wind or structural settling can account for the movement. Witnesses often report a sense of being followed or watched, though there is rarely a feeling of threat. Instead, the footsteps are described as measured and purposeful, as though someone is performing a task or moving with intent. Some parishioners interpret these sounds as the echoes of past clergy, choir members, or congregants, continuing their routine long after their earthly lives have ended. The church bells are another source of mystery at St. Patrick's. On multiple occasions, locals and visitors have reported hearing the deep, resonant tolling of the bells at unexpected times. Sometimes the ringing occurs during the night when no services are scheduled, filling the surrounding streets with an echo that carries through the quiet town. Investigations often reveal no mechanical or electrical cause for the bells, and the bell tower is typically empty when the tolling begins. Many who hear it describe the sound as deliberate and solemn, almost like a call to prayer or a signal marking an event long past. The bell tolling often coincides with other unusual occurrences, such as sudden chills, flickering lights, or shadowy figures glimpsed near the altar, heightening the sense that the church is imbued with a spiritual presence that extends beyond the living. Shadowy figures moving across the altar are perhaps the most striking experiences reported at St. Patrick's. Witnesses often describe seeing dark, human-like silhouettes gliding or standing near the altar, sometimes appearing to engage in prayer or ritual gestures. The figures are typically semi-transparent and vanish when approached, leaving only the faintest impression of their presence. Some have reported seeing multiple figures simultaneously, moving in silence as though performing a ceremony invisible to the living. Parishioners often describe a sense of solemnity or reverence surrounding these apparitions, as though the figures are honoring the sacred space and continuing practices from a time long past. The combination of shadowy figures, footsteps, and spontaneous bell tolling gives the impression that St. Patrick's is a living repository of devotion, where the echoes of past worship continue to interact with the present. Auditory phenomena complement these visual and tactile experiences. Whispers are occasionally heard, sometimes calling out names or reciting fragments of prayers. Footsteps appear to respond to visitors' movements, approaching and retreating with a rhythm that feels deliberate. Some have described hearing the rustle of robes or the gentle closing of pew doors when no one is present. These sounds, combined with the visual sightings of shadowy figures and the tolling bells, create a deeply immersive and otherworldly atmosphere that many describe as both awe-inspiring and unnerving. One particularly memorable account comes from a late-night visitor who stayed after evening prayer to reflect quietly in the sanctuary. As she walked down the center aisle, she heard faint footsteps echoing behind her, though no one was in the building. Looking toward the altar, she saw the outline of a shadowy figure moving slowly across the front, bowing its head as if in silent prayer. At the same moment, the bells rang out unexpectedly, their deep toll reverberating through the empty church. The figure paused briefly, then gradually disappeared into the shadows, leaving her with only the lingering sound of the bells and a chill in the air. The experience left her with a profound sense of reverence and a realization that the church's history and devotion continue to inhabit the space in a tangible way. The history of St. Patrick's Church provides context for these phenomena. For over a century, the building has witnessed the full spectrum of human emotion: joy, grief, hope, and sorrow through the ceremonies and rituals performed within its walls. The countless acts of devotion, combined with the emotional intensity of these events, may have left a residual energy that manifests as apparitions, sounds, or other unexplained occurrences. Paranormal researchers suggest that locations with long histories of worship, prayer, and ritual are often prone to such activity, with the building itself acting as a vessel for spiritual echoes. Investigations into St. Patrick's paranormal activity have documented interesting, though often inconclusive, evidence. Video recordings occasionally capture blurred figures near the altar or moving along aisles. Audio devices record unexplained footsteps or bell tolling when no one is present. Temperature sensors have detected sudden drops in specific areas of the church, corresponding with reported sightings, while skeptics may attribute these experiences to drafts, building acoustics, or psychological suggestion. The frequency and consistency of the reports suggest that something beyond ordinary perception is at work. Even during daylight hours, the church maintains a subtle aura of history and devotion. Sunlight streaming through the stained glass casts vibrant patterns across the pews and floors, shifting with the movement of the sun to create fleeting illusions of motion. The faint scent of old wood, incense, and candle wax lingers, evoking centuries of worship and human emotion. Visitors often leave with a sense of continuity, recognizing that the prayers, faith, and presence of past parishioners remain alive within the walls. Holy Rosary Church in New Orleans is a historic sanctuary that has long stood as a symbol of devotion, tradition, and architectural splendor. Its soaring ceilings, intricately carved pews, and stained glass windows showcase centuries of craftsmanship and faith. During the day, the church is a place of solemn reflection and quiet prayer, filled with parishioners attending Mass or seeking a peaceful moment amidst the bustle of the city. Yet when night falls, Holy Rosary reveals a different side, one steeped in mystery and the lingering presence of the past. Locals and visitors alike report sightings of phantom monks wandering the nave, the tolling of bells when no one is present, and whispers of prayers echoing through empty chapels, creating an atmosphere that is both haunting and reverent. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of phantom monks. Witnesses describe humanoid figures dressed in long, dark robes, moving slowly along the nave or standing near the altar in silent devotion. These figures are often semi-transparent, appearing almost like shadows brought to life, and vanish when approached, leaving only the sense that they were ever present. Many visitors note that the apparitions move with purpose, following the rhythm of prayer or ritual, as though continuing their spiritual duties long after their earthly lives have ended. The monks are generally described as peaceful and solemn, their presence evoking reverence rather than fear. Some parishioners have even claimed to feel a gentle pressure on their shoulders, or the sensation of a hand guiding them, as if the spirits are observing and protecting the sacred space. The church bells of Holy Rosary are another source of supernatural intrigue. On multiple occasions, residents report hearing the deep, resonant tolling of bells at night, long after all services have concluded. The sounds are often measured and deliberate, echoing across the streets of the surrounding neighborhood. Investigations have consistently found no mechanical or electrical cause for these occurrences, and the bell tower is typically empty when the ringing begins. For many, the spontaneous tolling of the bells seems almost like a message from the past, a spiritual signal marking devotion, remembrance, or warning. The combination of unseen figures and self-ringing bells enhances the feeling that Holy Rosary Church is a place where the living and the spiritual coexist, intersecting in ways that are subtle yet undeniable. Whispers of prayers in empty chapels are another phenomenon frequently reported by visitors. Faint voices can be heard reciting litanies, hymns, or fragments of prayers, often emanating from corners or alcoves where no one is present. These whispers are usually soft and difficult to decipher, yet they carry a weight that is unmistakable. Some visitors describe hearing their own names spoken within these murmurs, or the intonation of voices that mimic the cadence of historical congregations. The whispers often coincide with sightings of phantom monks or flickering shadows, reinforcing the sense that the church is alive with unseen devotion. For many, these experiences are interpreted as echoes of the centuries of prayer and ritual that have taken place within Holy Rosary, lingering as spiritual imprints upon the building. One remarkable account comes from a local historian who stayed after an evening service to examine the architecture in solitude. As he walked down the nave, he noticed a dark figure in a monk's robe gliding silently toward the altar. Simultaneously, the bells tolled unexpectedly, their deep resonance filling the empty space. The historian paused, watching the figure bow its head in what seemed like silent prayer. When he approached, the figure slowly dissipated into shadow, leaving him with the sensation of an unseen presence that was both protective and watchful. Moments later, faint whispers floated through the side chapels, echoing prayers from a time long past. The experience left him with a sense of awe, an understanding that the spiritual energy of Holy Rosary transcends generations. The historical context of Holy Rosary Church helps explain its reputation for paranormal activity. Established in the early 1800s, the church has served generations of faithful parishioners, witnessing countless ceremonies, joys, and sorrows. The accumulation of human emotion, devotion, and ritual over centuries is believed by some paranormal researchers to leave residual energy in sacred spaces, which can manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or other phenomena. The architecture of the church, with its high ceilings, vaulted arches, and quiet alcoves, may amplify these occurrences, allowing both sound and presence to linger in ways that are perceptible to those sensitive to the spiritual environment. Investigations into Holy Rosary's paranormal activity have recorded intriguing evidence, though it is often subtle. Cameras have captured fleeting, shadowy figures near the altar or along the nave. Audio devices have recorded faint prayers, whispers, or footsteps when no one is present. Thermal sensors occasionally detect sudden drops in temperature, corresponding with reported sightings. While skeptics may attribute these events to natural causes, drafts, or the power of suggestion, the frequency, consistency, and emotional impact of these encounters suggests that the church is a place where the unseen continues to interact with the living. Even during daytime, the church exudes a profound sense of history and devotion. Sunlight streaming through the stained glass casts intricate patterns across the pews and floors, sometimes creating subtle illusions of movement. The faint scent of wax, incense, and aged wood lingers, evoking centuries of prayer and ceremony. Visitors often report a palpable sense of continuity, a feeling that the prayers, faith, and presence of those who came before remain alive within the walls of Holy Rosary. Sacred Heart Church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is a historic house of worship that has long been a center of faith and community. Its stately brick facade, towering steeple, and intricate stained glass windows mark it as a landmark in the city, while its interior reflects centuries of devotion, prayer, and ceremony. During daylight hours, parishioners gather for mass weddings, baptisms, and other sacraments, filling the pews with quiet reverence and spiritual energy. But as night falls and the city grows still, Sacred Heart reveals a more mysterious side. Locals and visitors alike have reported shadowy figures appearing near the confessionals, the tolling of church bells at midnight long after services have ended, and an overwhelming sense that the church itself is alive with unseen presences. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves shadowy figures seen near the Witnesses describe dark, humanoid silhouettes that seem to linger just beyond sight, sometimes standing still as though in contemplation, other times moving slowly along the aisle. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving no trace except the faint feeling that they were there moments before. Many parishioners believe these apparitions are manifestations of spirits tied to the church, perhaps former clergy or parishioners whose devotion continued even after death. The figures are generally reported as solemn and quiet, never threatening. But their sudden appearances and disappearances create a palpable tension that draws attention to the sacredness of the space. The church bells of Sacred Heart are another source of intrigue. On multiple occasions, locals have reported hearing the deep, resonant tolling of the bells at midnight, long after all scheduled services have ended. The sound echoes through the surrounding streets, carrying far beyond the church itself. Investigations have often found no mechanical or electrical cause for the ringing, and the bell tower is typically empty when the sound occurs. Many who have experienced the midnight tolling describe it as both haunting and reverent, as if the bells are marking the passage of time, calling attention to the sacred space, or signaling the presence of something beyond the ordinary. The tolling often coincides with other phenomena, such as flickering lights or the movement of shadowy figures, further reinforcing the sense that the church is imbued with lingering spiritual energy. Visitors have also reported strange auditory experiences, in addition to visual sightings. Faint whispers, soft footfalls, and rustling sounds near the pews or confessionals have been described, often occurring when the church is entirely empty. Some have heard fragments of prayers or the distant intonation of familiar hymns, echoing through the nave in a way that suggests the repetition of centuries-old rituals. These sounds, while subtle, contribute to the overall impression that Sacred Heart is a living repository of devotion, where echoes of the faithful past continue to resonate alongside the living. One particularly compelling account comes from a parishioner who stayed late one evening to prepare for the next day's services. As she walked down the aisle, she noticed a dark shape standing near one of the confessionals. The figure did not move, but she felt its presence keenly, as if it were watching or waiting. Moments later, the deep tolling of the church bells rang out unexpectedly, reverberating through the empty building. When she looked back toward the figure, it had vanished, leaving her with only the faint sound of footsteps that seemed to fade into silence. The combination of sight, sound, and presence left her both awed and unsettled, a vivid reminder of the church's deep and mysterious history. The historical context of Sacred Heart Church helps explain why it may be a focal point for such phenomena. Established over a century ago, the church has witnessed generations of devotion, from joyful celebrations to solemn rites of mourning. The cumulative emotional energy of countless worshipers, combined with the structure's age and architectural features, may create conditions conducive to paranormal activity. Paranormal researchers suggest that residual energy from past ceremonies can manifest as visual or auditory phenomena, lingering in spaces where devotion, grief, and joy were intensely expressed. The shadowy figures, bell tolling, and whispered prayers may be echoes of this spiritual imprint. lingering long after the living have left the building. Investigations into Sacred Heart's reported hauntings have yielded intriguing, though often subtle, evidence. Security cameras sometimes capture unexplained movements near the confessionals, while audio devices record faint whispers or footfalls when no one is present. Temperature sensors detect sudden drops in specific areas of the church that correlate with sightings, though skeptics may attribute these occurrences to drafts, building acoustics, or psychological expectation. The consistency and frequency of reports from multiple witnesses over decades suggests that something unusual is at work. Even during the daytime, the church maintains an atmosphere of reverence that hints at its spectral activity. Sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows casts colorful patterns across the pews and floors, creating fleeting shadows that move with the day. The faint scent of incense, wax, and aged wood lingers in the air, evoking the centuries of worship that have taken place within the walls. Visitors often report a sense of continuity, feeling that the prayers, faith, and presence of past parishioners continue to inhabit the space, quietly observing and participating in the sacred life of the church. St. Mary's Church in Alexandria, Louisiana, stands as a testament to history, faith, and the enduring presence of community. Its stately architecture, featuring tall spires, brick walls, and stained glass windows, has watched over the city for more than a century, witnessing generations of worshipers entering its doors in search of solace, guidance, and spiritual connection. By day, St. Mary's is a peaceful place, filled with the quiet rustle of prayer books, the soft creak of wooden pews, and the warm light of the sun streaming through colorful glass. Yet as night descends, the church transforms into a place shrouded in mystery, where the boundaries between the living and the unseen seem to blur. Ghostly figures and old-fashioned attire have been reported wandering the grounds. Bells ring during windy nights, even when the mechanisms are secured, and the air seems thick with the echoes of centuries of devotion. Perhaps the most widely reported phenomenon at St. Mary's involves the ghostly figures seen along the church grounds. Visitors described human-shaped silhouettes dressed in attire reminiscent of the 19th and early 20th centuries, long dresses, cloaks, and formal suits. These figures often appear at the edges of the churchyard, walking slowly along pathways, pausing near gravestones or statues, and vanishing when approached. Witnesses describe an eerie combination of motion and stillness. The figures seem deliberate in their movements, yet almost ethereal, as if they are aware of the living but are bound to another realm. Some parishioners have suggested that these apparitions are former members of the congregation, individuals whose devotion continued after death, lingering near the place that meant so much to them in life. Others believe they may be echoes of historical events, memories of the faithful, etched into the very fabric of the church grounds. The church bells at St. Mary's add another layer to its mysterious reputation. Locals frequently report hearing the bells toll on windy nights, even when the mechanisms are secured and no one is present to ring them. The deep, resonant sound carries through the surrounding neighborhood, often startling those who hear it. Investigations reveal no mechanical cause, and the bell ropes and gears remain untouched, leading many to conclude that the ringing is supernatural in origin. Some suggest that the bells respond to spiritual energy, tolling in recognition of unseen visitors or echoing prayers of the faithful long gone. Others speculate that the sound may serve as a message or warning, a reminder that the church is a space where the living and the spiritual intersect. The tolling often coincides with sightings of ghostly figures, creating a multifaceted experience that engages both sight and sound, heightening the sense that the church is alive in ways beyond the ordinary. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bells. Visitors and parishioners have reported hearing faint footsteps on the stone pathways and wooden floors, the distant rustling of robes, and whispers that seem to rise from the very air itself. These sounds are most often noticed at night, when the church is empty, yet they are distinct enough to be heard clearly. Some describe hearing fragments of prayers or hymns, echoing as though a long-past service were replaying itself invisibly. In combination with the ghostly figures and spontaneous bell tolling, These sounds create a layered, immersive environment in which the past appears to linger just out of reach, tangible yet elusive. One particularly memorable account comes from a local historian who visited the church late one evening to document its architecture. As he walked along the main pathway, he noticed a figure in period attire standing beneath a street lamp-like lantern near the entrance. The figure remained motionless for several minutes, then began to move slowly toward the church doors. Moments later, the bells tolled suddenly, their deep resonance filling the air. When the historian approached, the figure faded into the darkness, leaving him with only the echo of the bells and the sensation of being watched. He later described feeling a mixture of awe and unease, a recognition that the church held a presence both protective and mysterious. The historical context of St. Mary's Church provides insight into these occurrences. Founded in the 1800s, the church has been a center for faith, culture, and social life in Alexandria for generations. Over time, the congregation has celebrated countless milestones, from weddings and baptisms to funerals and memorials. The emotional intensity of these events, combined with centuries of prayer and devotion, may have left a residual energy within the building and grounds. Paranormal researchers suggest that locations with long histories of worship and human emotion often exhibit phenomena such as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or cold spots. At St. Mary's, the combination of architecture, history, and accumulated spiritual energy creates a unique environment where these experiences appear most vividly. Investigations into St. Mary's have occasionally produced intriguing evidence. Cameras have captured blurred figures moving along the pathways, while audio devices have recorded faint bell tolling and whispers during otherwise quiet nights. Environmental sensors sometimes detect sudden temperature drops, particularly near areas where apparitions have been reported. While skeptics may attribute these events to drafts, optical illusions, or psychological expectation, the consistency of reports over decades, often from multiple witnesses, lends credence to the church's reputation as a place where the unseen remains present. Even during daylight hours, St. Mary's exudes a sense of enduring presence. Sunlight through the stained glass casts colorful patterns across pews and floors, creating fleeting impressions of motion and shadow. The faint scent of wax, aged wood, and incense evokes the centuries of worship that have occurred within the walls. Visitors often leave with a sense of connection to the past, recognizing that the prayers, devotion, and presence of generations continue to inhabit the space. St. Teresa Church in Slidell, Louisiana, is a revered landmark known for its serene atmosphere, towering steeples, and elegant stained glass windows. Built decades ago, the church has long served as a spiritual center for the community, hosting masses, weddings, baptisms, and funerals. By day, the church exudes a sense of peace, with sunlight streaming through colorful glass panes, casting vibrant patterns across polished wooden pews. Parishioners and visitors alike find solace in its quiet hallways and the soft echo of prayers. Yet, as dusk settles over Slidell and the streets grow quiet, St. Teresa reveals a more mysterious side. Visitors report apparitions of nuns gliding silently along the hallways, church bells tolling unexpectedly during storms, and lights flickering without explanation, creating an atmosphere that is both haunting and reverent. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at St. Teresa involves sightings of ghostly nuns. Witnesses describe figures dressed in traditional habits, moving slowly and deliberately along the hallways, often appearing near the side chapels or cloisters. These apparitions are typically semi-transparent and vanish when approached, leaving an unsettling sense that the figures were present but never fully corporeal. Many parishioners and visitors interpret these sightings as manifestations of the church's past caretakers or devoted nuns who dedicated their lives to the parish and continued their spiritual duties beyond death. The figures are not described as threatening. Rather, their presence often evokes a sense of solemnity and reverence, as if they are quietly overseeing the sanctuary they once tended in life. The church bells at St. Teresa are another focal point for reports of the unexplained. Locals have frequently recounted hearing the deep tolling of bells during storms, sometimes at the height of a lightning strike or during heavy rain. Even when the mechanisms are secured and no one is present, the sound resonates across the surrounding neighborhood, echoing through the empty streets and invoking a sense of both awe and unease. Investigations into these occurrences often reveal no mechanical cause, and the bell tower is found to be untouched. Many believe that the bells may be responding to heightened spiritual energy during storms, acting as a conduit between the earthly and the unseen, or signaling the presence of spirits within the church. The tolling often coincides with other reported phenomena, such as flickering lights or the appearance of nuns, further reinforcing the sense that St. Teresa is alive in ways beyond ordinary perception. Flickering lights are another mysterious element of the church. Visitors and parishioners have reported lights dimming and brightening unpredictably, particularly in hallways, chapels, and near the altar. These changes often occur when the church is empty and no electrical issues are identified. Some witnesses describe the lights flickering in response to movement or sounds, almost as if acknowledging the presence of unseen entities. Combined with the sightings of ghostly nuns and the spontaneous tolling of bells, the flickering lights contribute to a layered sensory experience that blurs the line between the living and the spectral. One particularly memorable account comes from a parishioner who stayed after an evening service to reflect in the nave. As she walked along the side aisle, she noticed a dark, robed figure gliding silently toward the altar. At the same moment, the lights overhead flickered, casting brief shadows across the pews. Moments later, the bells rang out from the tower, deep and resonant, echoing through the empty streets outside. When she turned to follow the figure, it had vanished, leaving only the faintest sensation of presence and a lingering chill in the air. The combination of visual, auditory, and environmental anomalies left her with a profound sense of reverence and mystery, as though she had witnessed a ritual continuing unseen within the church. The historical context of St. Teresa Church helps explain why it may be a locus for such phenomena. Established in the early 20th century, the church has been the site of countless ceremonies, celebrations, and moments of deep spiritual significance. The emotional intensity of these events, along with the devotion of generations of parishioners and clergy, may have left an imprint on the building, manifesting as apparitions, sounds, or other unexplained phenomena. Paranormal researchers suggest that spaces with long histories of worship, prayer, and ritual often accumulate residual energy, which can manifest when conditions align during storms, quiet nights, or moments of intense emotional focus. Investigations at St. Teresa have produced subtle yet intriguing evidence. Security cameras have occasionally captured blurred, human-shaped forms moving through hallways, while audio devices have recorded unexplained footsteps, whispers, and even faint bell tolling. Temperature sensors have detected sudden drops in localized areas, especially near hallways and chapels where apparitions are most frequently reported. While skeptics may attribute these phenomena to environmental factors or psychological suggestion, the repeated, consistent reports from multiple witnesses over decades lend credence to the idea that St. Teresa Church is a space where the unseen continues to interact with the living. Even during daylight, the church maintains an aura of reverence and continuity. Sunlight through the stained glass casts dancing patterns across the floors and pews, while the faint scent of aged wood, wax, and incense lingers, invoking centuries of prayer and devotion. Visitors often report a sense of connection to the past, as if the faith, dedication, and presence of previous generations remain within the walls, quietly observing, guiding, and interacting with the living. St. James Church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is a historic sanctuary that has stood for generations as a center of faith, worship, and community. Its high vaulted ceilings, stained glass windows, and ornate wooden pews create an atmosphere of solemnity and reverence during the day, drawing parishioners who come to pray, attend Mass, or find solace in its quiet halls. Yet, after the sun sets and the streets grow silent, St. James is said to reveal a different, more mysterious presence. Shadowy figures are reported kneeling at empty pews. Church bells toll without warning, and icy gusts pass through the sanctuary, giving those who wander inside a chilling reminder that the spiritual energy of the church extends beyond the living. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at St. James involves shadowy figures seen throughout the sanctuary. Visitors describe humanoid silhouettes, often semi-transparent, kneeling in pews that are otherwise empty, as if in prayer. These figures are most commonly observed in the early evening or late at night, when the church is deserted. Witnesses often note that the apparitions move slowly, with deliberate and reverent gestures, sometimes folding their hands in silent devotion, or bowing their heads. When approached, the figures vanish as if dissolving into the air, leaving behind only the echo of their presence. Many believe these spirits are former parishioners, clergy, or devoted individuals whose faith was so strong that it lingers within the church long after their passing. The church bells at St. James have a reputation for ringing on their own, sometimes without explanation. Parishioners have reported hearing the deep tolling of the bells during quiet nights, with no one present to operate the mechanisms. The sound carries across the surrounding neighborhood, resonating through the empty streets and drawing attention to the church's steeple. Investigations often reveal no mechanical or electrical cause, and the bell tower is typically empty when the tolling occurs. Many locals interpret these unexplained sounds as a signal from the unseen, a spiritual echo or a reminder that the church is a space where the living and the spiritual coexist. On several occasions, the tolling coincides with other unusual phenomena, such as the appearance of shadowy figures or sudden changes in temperature, reinforcing the sense that St. James is infused with a lingering, otherworldly energy. Visitors also report the sensation of icy gusts passing through the sanctuary. These cold drafts often occur in enclosed areas of the church, such as the aisles between pews, near the altar, or alongside corridors, and are felt even when all doors and windows are closed. The sudden drops in temperature can be startling, and some report the feeling of being brushed by unseen hands. These chills often coincide with other experiences, including the appearance of shadowy figures or the spontaneous ringing of bells, heightening the sense that the church is a place where the natural and supernatural intertwine. One memorable account comes from a parishioner who stayed after an evening service to pray in the quiet sanctuary. As she knelt in a pew near the back of the church, she noticed a dark shape moving silently toward the altar. The figure, dressed in indistinct clothing, paused mid-aisle, bowing its head in a gesture of prayer. At that same moment, a deep tolling of the church bells echoed through the empty neighborhood, resonating with the quiet of the sanctuary. When she rose to follow the figure, it had vanished, leaving only the faint sensation of presence and a lingering chill in the air. The experience left her both awed and uneasy, a reminder that the spiritual life of St. James extends far beyond what can be seen or heard in ordinary circumstances. The historical significance of St. James Church adds context to these phenomena. Established in the 19th century, the church has served as a spiritual home for countless generations. Weddings, baptisms, funerals, and daily prayers have all taken place within its walls, imbuing the building with centuries of devotion, emotion, and ritual. Paranormal researchers suggest that locations with a long history of worship and intense emotional energy often exhibit residual phenomena, such as apparitions, unexplained sounds, and environmental anomalies. At St. James, the combination of history, architecture, and devotion creates conditions where such occurrences are reported with remarkable consistency. Investigations have occasionally captured evidence supporting these accounts. Cameras positioned throughout the sanctuary have recorded fleeting, shadowy figures moving along the pews or near the altar. Audio devices have picked up faint, indistinct whispers or footsteps when no one else is present. Environmental sensors have detected sudden temperature drops in areas commonly associated with apparitions. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to natural causes, the repeated and corroborated reports from multiple sources over decades suggest that something beyond ordinary explanation may be occurring within the walls of St. James Church. Even during the day, The church conveys a sense of reverence that hints at its spiritual depth. Sunlight streaming through stained glass windows casts colorful, shifting patterns across the floors and pews, creating the illusion of movement that seems to echo the presence of past worshippers. The faint scent of incense and aged would evoke centuries of devotion, and visitors often describe a feeling of continuity, as if the prayers and faith of previous generations continue to inhabit the space, quietly observing and participating in the life of the church. St. Francis Xavier Church in New Orleans is a historic and architecturally striking place of worship, known for its intricate stained glass windows, soaring ceilings, and stately bell tower. Situated in the heart of the city, the church has served generations of parishioners, hosting masses, weddings, baptisms, and countless prayers over its long history. By day, the church offers a peaceful sanctuary for those seeking spiritual solace. The sunlight streaming through the colorful glass, casting vibrant patterns across the polished pews and stone floors. Yet, as evening falls and the streets grow quiet, St. Francis Xavier reveals a side that is less easily explained. Visitors report seeing shadowy figures at the altar, hearing whispers echoing through empty pews, and witnessing the bell tower tolling unexpectedly, startling all who are nearby. Among the most frequently reported phenomena are the apparitions at the altar. Visitors describe human-shaped figures standing or kneeling in prayer, often appearing semi-transparent and dressed in clothing reminiscent of earlier centuries. Some appear as clergy in traditional robes, while others resemble parishioners of long ago, their forms indistinct but undeniably human. These figures are typically seen during the late evening or early night, when the church is empty, and they often vanish when approached, leaving a lingering sense that they were watching or awaiting something beyond human comprehension. Many locals believe these apparitions are the spirits of devoted clergy and parishioners, whose faith was so strong that it continues to inhabit the sacred space even after their deaths. Witnesses often describe a mixture of awe and unease, sensing reverence and quiet solemnity in the presence of these figures. The bell tower at St. Francis Xavier is another source of mystery and intrigue. On several occasions, parishioners and visitors have reported hearing the deep, resonant tolling of the bells for no apparent reason. The bells sometimes ring during calm nights, at unexpected hours, or during storms, even when the mechanisms are secured and no one is present to operate them. The sound reverberates through the surrounding streets and neighborhood, capturing the attention of anyone nearby. Investigations often fail to uncover a mechanical explanation, and the bell tower is typically empty when the tolling occurs. Many interpret the mysterious ringing as a signal from the unseen, a reminder of the church's spiritual presence, or perhaps a reflection of lingering energy from centuries of devotion and ceremony. The tolling often coincides with sightings of figures at the altar, creating a multi-sensory experience that blurs the line between the natural and the supernatural. Visitors also report hearing whispers and faint voices echoing through the pews and aisles. These sounds often occur when the church is entirely empty and no one is nearby. Some describe hearing fragments of prayers, quiet conversations, or the soft intonation of hymns long past, carried as if by the very walls of the sanctuary. The whispers seem to originate from multiple directions, filling the air with a subtle, almost tangible presence. Combined with the visual apparitions and bell tolling, these auditory experiences create an atmosphere that is both haunting and deeply reverent, giving the sense that the church itself is alive with the spiritual echoes of its history. One particularly compelling account comes from a visitor who remained in the church after an evening service to pray in solitude. As she approached the altar, she noticed a shadowy figure kneeling near the steps. The figure remained still, head bowed, as if deep in prayer. Suddenly, the bells rang out, resonating through the empty neighborhood. When she turned to observe the figure more closely, it had disappeared, leaving only the faint sound of whispered words and the lingering scent of candle wax. She described the experience as both unsettling and profound, a reminder that St. Francis Xavier is a space where the devotion of past generations continues to be present. The history of St. Francis Xavier Church helps explain why it may be a focal point for such unusual activity. Established over a century ago, the church has hosted countless ceremonies, rituals, and prayers, accumulating layers of emotional and spiritual energy over time. Weddings, baptisms, funerals, and daily masses have left their mark on the building, creating an environment that may naturally lend itself to residual phenomena. Paranormal researchers suggest that places with long histories of devotion often exhibit unusual occurrences, including apparitions, unexplained sounds, and environmental anomalies such as sudden gusts of air or temperature fluctuations. At St. Francis Xavier, the combination of historical significance, architectural design, and long-standing spiritual activity provides fertile ground for these reports. Investigations into the church's reported hauntings have occasionally yielded intriguing, though subtle, evidence. Cameras have captured blurred, human-shaped forms moving near the altar, while audio devices have recorded whispers or faint hymns when no one is present. Environmental sensors sometimes detect sudden drops in temperature, particularly near areas where apparitions are most frequently reported. Skeptics often suggest that drafts, sound echoes, or optical illusions may account for some of these experiences. However, the consistency of eyewitness accounts over decades, often from multiple independent witnesses, suggests that St. Francis Xavier Church is a site where unexplained phenomena are reliably observed. Even during daylight, the church maintains an atmosphere that hints at its spiritual depth. Sunlight filtering through stained glass casts vibrant reflections across the pews and floors, while the faint scent of incense and polished wood evokes the centuries of devotion that have taken place inside. Visitors often report a sense of connection to the past, feeling that the prayers, faith, and presence of generations of worshippers continue to inhabit the space, quietly observing and interacting with the living. St. Mary Magdalene Church in Abbeville, Louisiana, stands as both a place of devotion and a keeper of mysteries that stretch beyond the veil of the living. With its historic architecture, towering steeple, and intricate stained glass, the church has long been a cornerstone of the community. By day, sunlight filters through colorful panes, casting a kaleidoscope of light across wooden pews, polished floors, and stone altars. Visitors find peace here, drawn by centuries of prayer, reflection, and sacred tradition. Yet when night falls, the church takes on a more enigmatic character. Locals report seeing apparitions of priests walking the grounds, hearing the tolling of bells at odd hours, and catching faint whispers of hymns long forgotten, resonating as if carried through time itself. One of the most frequent and chilling reports involves ghostly priests who appear along the church grounds. Witnesses describe shadowy figures, often in traditional robes, moving solemnly along walkways, pausing near the entrance, or disappearing near the altar. These figures are described as semi-transparent, their movements deliberate, yet ethereal, almost as if the living and the dead are coexisting in the same space but never truly intersecting. Some parishioners believe these apparitions are spirits of former clergy, continuing their devotions beyond death, while others suggest they may be echoes of past rituals embedded into the very fabric of the church. Witnesses often speak of a sense of awe and reverence upon seeing these figures, feeling that the spirits are not malevolent, but guardians of the sacred space. The church bells have also become a focus of local fascination. Parishioners and visitors alike have reported the deep, resonant tolling of bells at seemingly random hours, often during calm nights or stormy weather alike. The bell tower is normally secured, and investigations frequently reveal no mechanical cause for the sudden ringing. The sound carries across the surrounding streets, startling passersby and drawing attention to the church. Many who have heard the unexplained tolling believe it is a spiritual signal, perhaps a remnant of centuries of prayer or a manifestation of the persistent presence of those who once tended the church. The timing of the bells often coincides with other phenomena, such as sightings of the apparitions or faint auditory echoes, adding to the layered, almost cinematic experience of visiting St. Mary Magdalene after dark. Auditory experiences extend beyond the bells. Locals report hearing faint chanting, whispered prayers, and hymns that seem to emanate from empty pews or distant corners of the sanctuary. These sounds are usually subtle, almost like a memory carried in the air, and often vanish when one tries to pinpoint their source. Some describe the voices as those of a choir long disbanded, their harmonies lingering as echoes of devotion from another era. Others hear the faint murmur of solitary prayer, a whisper of faith that persists even in the absence of living worshipers. The combination of ghostly figures, mysterious bell tolls, and ethereal voices creates an immersive environment, one where the past feels vividly present and the boundaries between the living and the spiritual are blurred. One particularly striking account comes from a resident who stayed late one evening to light candles in the church for personal prayer. As she walked the grounds, she noticed a figure approaching the side entrance, dressed in robes and carrying an air of solemn purpose. The figure paused, as if acknowledging her presence, then continued toward the altar. At the same moment, a low tolling of the bells rang out, echoing across the empty streets surrounding the church. When she followed the figure to the threshold of the sanctuary, it vanished, leaving only the sound of faint chants and a lingering sense of reverence. She described the experience as both unsettling and profoundly moving, a reminder that St. Mary Magdalene Church is a space where devotion transcends time and persists beyond the mortal realm. The history of the church helps explain the nature of these phenomena. Founded in the 1800s, St. Mary Magdalene has been a spiritual anchor for generations of parishioners. The church has witnessed countless ceremonies, baptisms, weddings, funerals, and masses that carry profound emotional and spiritual significance. Paranormal researchers suggest that locations with a long history of worship often accumulate residual energy, which can manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, and environmental anomalies. At St. Mary Magdalene, the convergence of architectural design, historical significance, and centuries of devotion creates the perfect conditions for such phenomena to occur. Investigations into the church's hauntings have occasionally produced intriguing evidence. Security cameras have captured blurred, human-shaped figures moving across the grounds, while audio devices have recorded faint chants, whispers, and bell tolling when the church was otherwise empty. Temperature sensors sometimes detect sudden, localized drops, particularly near areas where apparitions have been reported. Skeptics may suggest drafts, acoustics, or psychological suggestion. Yet the consistency of eyewitness accounts spanning decades suggests that there is something unusual and persistent at St. Mary Magdalene. Even during daylight, the church retains an atmosphere that hints at its spectral presence. Sunlight through stained glass casts dancing patterns across pews and floors, while the scent of wax, incense, and polished wood evokes centuries of devotion. Visitors often leave with a sense that the faith and presence of generations past continue to inhabit the space, quietly observing and interacting with the living. St. Bernard Church, located in St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana, is a historic place of worship known for its striking architecture, tall steeples, and intricate stained glass windows. For decades, it has served as a spiritual center for the community, hosting masses, weddings, baptisms, and countless moments of reflection and prayer. By day, sunlight streams through colorful panes, illuminating the polished pews and the stone floors in a display of serenity and devotion. Parishioners and visitors alike find comfort within its walls, drawn by the centuries of history and faith embedded in the sanctuary. Yet, as evening descends and the streets grow quiet, the church is said to reveal a far more mysterious side. Locals report phantom figures moving silently through the nave, church bells ringing spontaneously for no reason, and shadowy forms lingering near old pews after dark, creating an atmosphere that is both haunting and reverent. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at St. Bernard involves ghostly figures gliding through the nave. Visitors describe shadowy silhouettes that move with deliberate slowness, often appearing near the altar or along the side aisles. These figures are typically semi-transparent, their forms fading and reappearing as if caught between the world of the living and the spiritual realm. Some appear to be clergy, dressed in long robes reminiscent of earlier decades, while others resemble parishioners of generations past. Witnesses often report a sense of solemnity and reverence in the presence of these apparitions, as though the spirits are quietly performing rituals or offering silent prayers, echoing the devotion that has long defined the church. When approached, the figures vanish, leaving behind only the echo of their passage and the lingering feeling that they are still present in some intangible way. The spontaneous ringing of the church bells is another phenomenon that has captivated locals for years. Parishioners report hearing the deep, resonant tolling during quiet nights, often when no one is near the bell tower and the mechanisms are secured. The sound can startle those within the church and carry across the surrounding neighborhood, filling empty streets with a haunting resonance. Some witnesses have experienced the bells ringing during storms or moments of heavy rain, while others have reported hearing them in calm, clear conditions. Investigations often reveal no mechanical or human cause, leading many to believe that the bell tolls are a response to spiritual energy lingering within the church or a signal from the unseen realm. A reminder that St. Bernard is a place where the living and the spectral coexist. Visitors also report shadowy forms lingering near the older pews, particularly in sections of the church that are less frequently used. These forms are often seen at night, standing or kneeling as if in contemplation or prayer. Some describe the sensation of being watched or accompanied, a subtle presence that brushes against the senses without physical contact. At times, the air around these areas feels colder, and a faint draft passes along the floor, though all doors and windows are closed. These experiences are often accompanied by distant echo-soft footsteps, faint whispers, or the creak of floorboards fading to the otherworldly atmosphere. One particularly memorable account comes from a parishioner who stayed after an evening mass to light candles in quiet reflection. As he walked through the nave, he noticed a shadowy figure moving slowly near the altar, pausing briefly as if acknowledging his presence. At that moment, the bells rang unexpectedly, their deep tones reverberating through the empty streets outside. When he turned to follow the figure, it had vanished, leaving only a lingering chill in the air and the subtle sense that the sanctuary itself was alive with unseen activity. The combination of visual, auditory, and environmental anomalies left him with a profound sense of awe, as if he had witnessed a continuity of faith and devotion that transcended mortality. The historical significance of St. Bernard Church provides context for these occurrences. Established over a century ago, the church has been the site of countless ceremonies and moments of spiritual intensity. Weddings, funerals, baptisms, and daily masses have left deep impressions on the building and the community. Paranormal researchers suggest that locations with long histories of worship often accumulate residual energy, which can manifest in forms such as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or sudden changes in temperature. At St. Bernard, the blend of historical depth, architectural design, and the devotion of generations of parishioners creates a unique environment in which these unexplained phenomena can occur with remarkable consistency. Investigations have occasionally produced subtle, yet compelling evidence. Cameras installed within the nave have captured fleeting shadows moving across pews or near the altar, while audio devices have recorded faint footsteps, whispers, or the tolling of bells when the church was otherwise empty. Environmental sensors sometimes detect sudden drops in temperature, particularly in areas associated with the reported apparitions. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to drafts, acoustic effects, or psychological suggestion, the repeated accounts from independent witnesses over decades point to a consistent pattern of unexplained phenomena. Even during the day, St. Bernard Church retains an atmosphere that hints at its spectral dimension. Sunlight through stained glass casts shifting patterns across floors and pews, while the lingering scent of incense and polished wood evokes the centuries of devotion that have taken place within the sanctuary. Visitors often leave with the impression that the faith and presence of past generations continue to inhabit the space, quietly observing, guiding, and interacting with the living. St. Anne Church in New Orleans stands as a historic testament to faith, devotion, and architectural grandeur. Its soaring ceilings, intricate stained glass windows, and polished wooden pews have welcomed generations of worshipers, offering a place for prayer, reflection, and sacred ritual. By day, sunlight streams through the colorful panes, painting the floors with patterns of vibrant light. The air carries the faint scent of incense and aged wood, evoking centuries of devotion and quiet contemplation. Yet, as night falls and the city streets grow silent, St. Anne reveals a more mysterious side. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly women gliding along the aisles, hearing church bells toll for no apparent reason, and catching whispered prayers echoing through empty rooms, creating an atmosphere that is as haunting as it is sacred. The most frequently reported phenomenon involves the apparitions of ghostly women moving gracefully among the pews and aisles. Witnesses describe these figures as ethereal, often wearing long, flowing garments reminiscent of the 19th or early 20th centuries. They appear partially translucent, their movements deliberate and measured, almost as if continuing a ritual interrupted by time. Some visitors have observed the women kneeling at the altar or gliding silently toward side chapels, pausing briefly before vanishing. Others have noted a sense of quiet reverence emanating from the figures, as if their purpose is not to frighten but to maintain a spiritual presence within the church. Many believe these apparitions are the spirits of devout parishioners who remained connected to St. Anne even after death, their faith lingering within the walls of the sanctuary. The bell tower of St. Anne Church has also become a focal point for reports of the unexplained. Locals and visitors alike have described hearing the deep, resonant tolling of bells at irregular hours, often when the church is deserted. The sound can startle those nearby, echoing across the surrounding streets and through the quiet city. Investigations frequently reveal no mechanical or human cause for the ringing, and the bell tower is typically empty when the sounds occur. Some attribute these mysterious tolls to the lingering spiritual energy of the church, a manifestation of devotion or a reminder of the presence of those who have passed. On several occasions, the spontaneous ringing of the bells has coincided with sightings of ghostly figures or other unusual phenomena, creating a layered and immersive experience that leaves witnesses both awed and unnerved. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bells. Visitors and parishioners report hearing faint whispers and prayers echoing through empty rooms and the nave. These sounds are subtle, almost as if carried from another time, and often seem to originate from multiple directions. Some hear fragments of spoken prayers, others detect quiet hymns or the soft murmuring of devout voices. These auditory experiences often occur alongside sightings of apparitions, lending the impression that the church is alive with the spiritual echoes of its past. The whispered prayers, in particular, give visitors a sense of continuity, as if the faith and devotion of those who came before continue to inhabit the space, interacting silently with the living. One particularly memorable account comes from a local who remained in the church after an evening service. As she knelt near the front pews, she noticed a pale, shadowy figure moving slowly through the aisle. The woman seemed to glide over the floor, her long gown trailing behind her as she approached the altar. At the same moment, the bells tolled unexpectedly, their resonant tones filling the empty streets outside. When the observer attempted to follow the apparition, it vanished, leaving only the faint sound of whispered prayers and a lingering chill in the air. She described the experience as both unsettling and deeply moving, a reminder that St. Anne Church is a space where devotion transcends the boundaries of life and death. The history of St. Anne Church offers context for these phenomena. Established over a century ago, the church has witnessed countless religious ceremonies, from weddings and baptisms to funerals and daily masses. Each event has left its mark, creating layers of emotional and spiritual energy that may contribute to the residual phenomena reported today. Paranormal researchers note that locations with long histories of worship often accumulate such energy, which can manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or environmental anomalies like sudden temperature drops or fleeting cold drafts. At St. Anne, the combination of historical significance, architectural beauty, and long-standing spiritual devotion creates an environment ripe for such experiences. Investigations have occasionally provided subtle evidence of these occurrences, Security cameras have recorded shadowy shapes moving through the nave, while audio devices have captured whispers, faint prayers, or unexplained bell tolling when the church was otherwise empty. Environmental sensors have detected localized drops in temperature, particularly in areas associated with apparitions. Skeptics may point to drafts, acoustics, or imagination. Yet the consistency and longevity of eyewitness reports suggest that there is something more at work within the walls of St. Anne. Even during the day, the church exudes an atmosphere that hints at its spiritual depth. Sunlight filtering through stained glass casts dancing, colored reflections across the pews and floors, while the faint scent of incense evokes centuries of devotion. Visitors often feel a connection to the past, as if the prayers, hopes, and faith of generations still linger in the air, quietly observing and participating in the life of the church. St. Charles Borromeo Church in Grand Quito, Louisiana, is a historic sanctuary steeped in centuries of faith, devotion, and community life. Its towering steeple, ornate altar, and intricate stained glass windows have long welcomed parishioners seeking solace, prayer, and spiritual reflection. By day, sunlight filters through the colorful glass, casting vibrant patterns on the polished wooden pews and stone floors, while the quiet hum of the town outside emphasizes the church's serene presence. Yet when night falls and the streets grow still, St. Charles Borromeo reveals a far more mysterious side. Visitors report shadowy figures appearing near the altar and bell tower, the deep tolling of bells at midnight, and a subtle atmosphere of presence that is both unsettling and awe-inspiring. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves the apparition of shadowy figures near the altar. Witnesses describe human-like shapes, often partially transparent, moving slowly and deliberately, as if engaged in a solemn ritual that has continued beyond their mortal lives. Some appear to be clergy, robes flowing as they approach the altar, while others resemble parishioners from long ago, kneeling in quiet devotion. These figures seem to vanish when approached, leaving only a lingering sense of reverence and the faint echo of movement. Visitors often report feeling observed, not in a threatening way, but with an air of quiet guardianship, as if the spirits are maintaining their watch over the sacred space. The bell tower of St. Charles Borromeo is another source of eerie activity. Numerous accounts describe the bells ringing at midnight or at other unexpected hours when no one is present to operate them. The deep, resonant tolling can be heard throughout the surrounding streets and countryside, startling visitors and passers-by alike. Investigations frequently find the bell mechanisms secured and in working order, yet the sounds persist, leaving witnesses to speculate about their origin. Many locals believe that the spontaneous ringing is a manifestation of spiritual energy, a signal from the unseen, or a reminder of the church's enduring significance in the lives of those who once tended it. On several occasions, these mysterious bell tolls coincide with sightings of the shadowy figures near the altar, heightening the sense that the church is alive with a presence from another time. Beyond the altar and bell tower, visitors report a variety of auditory phenomena. Whispered prayers, faint chants, and the soft murmur of voices are often heard echoing through the empty sanctuary. These sounds are typically subtle, as if carried from another era, and seem to emanate from different parts of the church simultaneously. Some hear fragments of old hymns, others faint recitations of prayers long forgotten. The combination of shadowy figures, mysterious bell tolls, and these whispers creates a multi-sensory experience that blurs the line between the natural and the supernatural, leaving visitors with a profound sense of the church's enduring spiritual presence. One particularly compelling account comes from a visitor who remained in the church after an evening mass to light candles and pray in solitude. As she moved toward the altar, she noticed a dark, shadowy figure standing nearby, motionless yet unmistakably human in form. At the same moment, the bells rang out from the tower, their resonant tones echoing across the quiet town. When she attempted to approach the figure, it disappeared into the shadows, leaving only a faint chill in the air and the sound of distant, whispered prayers. She described the experience as both unnerving and deeply moving, a reminder that St. Charles Borromeo is a space where devotion transcends time and the boundary between the living and the spiritual is thin. The history of the church provides important context for these phenomena. Established in the 1800s, St. Charles Borromeo has been a central place of worship for generations of parishioners. It has witnessed countless ceremonies, baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses that carry immense emotional and spiritual significance. Paranormal researchers often note that locations with long histories of dedicated worship accumulate residual energy, which can manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or environmental anomalies, such as sudden cold spots or gusts of air. At St. Charles Borromeo, the combination of historical significance, architectural design, and centuries of devotion creates an environment ripe for unexplained occurrences. Investigations into the church's reported hauntings have sometimes yielded subtle yet compelling evidence. Cameras positioned in the nave and near the altar have captured faint, human-shaped shadows, while audio devices have recorded whispers, chants, and bell tolling when the church was empty. Environmental sensors occasionally detect sudden drops in temperature, particularly near areas where shadowy figures are most frequently seen, while skeptics may suggest drafts, acoustics, or imagination as explanations. The consistency of independent eyewitness accounts, spanning decades, suggests that something extraordinary is at work within St. Charles Borromeo Church. Even during daylight hours, the church exudes an atmosphere hinting at its spiritual depth. Sunlight through stained glass casts shifting patterns across floors and pews, while the scent of wax and incense evokes centuries of prayer and devotion. Visitors often leave with a sense that the faith and presence of past generations remain within the sanctuary. Silently observing, guiding, and interacting with the living, Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Lafayette, Louisiana, is a historic sanctuary renowned for its stunning architecture, intricate stained glass windows, and the quiet reverence that fills its halls. For generations, it has served as a center of worship, community gatherings, and spiritual reflection. During the day, sunlight streams through the colorful panes, casting a kaleidoscope of light across the wooden pews, polished floors, and stone altars. The soft murmur of parishioners and the faint scent of incense create an atmosphere of solemnity and devotion. Yet, as evening descends and the streets grow silent, Our Lady of Lourdes reveals a far more mysterious and haunting dimension. Visitors have reported seeing phantom figures of parishioners moving along the pews, hearing the deep tolling of bells on stormy nights, and catching ghostly chants echoing through the empty hallways, creating an experience that is both unsettling and profoundly spiritual. The most frequently reported phenomenon involves the apparition of parishioners moving silently among the pews. Witnesses describe shadowy forms, often appearing in old-fashioned attire, gliding along the aisles as if continuing prayers and rituals from another time. Some figures kneel at the altar or at the ends of pews, while others appear to move slowly toward the side chapels, pausing briefly before vanishing. These apparitions are typically semi-transparent, their movements deliberate and reverent, suggesting devotion that has transcended the limits of life. Observers often report a profound sense of solemnity and quiet awe, feeling that the spirits are not malevolent, but guardians of the sacred space, preserving a spiritual presence that has endured for decades. The church's bell tower is another focal point of paranormal activity. Numerous accounts describe the bells ringing spontaneously, particularly during storms, when the wind rattles the windows and the skies above seem charged with electricity. Witnesses report hearing the deep, resonant tolling of the bells at odd hours, often long after the last service has ended. Investigations frequently reveal no mechanical or human cause for the ringing, as the tower is securely locked and the bell mechanisms are in working order. Some locals interpret these mysterious tolls as manifestations of lingering spiritual energy, reminders of devotion, or signals from the unseen realm. In several instances, the spontaneous ringing of the bells has coincided with sightings of phantom parishioners or ghostly movement along the pews, reinforcing the church's reputation as a site where the spiritual and temporal realms intersect. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bell tolls. Visitors and parishioners alike report hearing faint chanting, whispered prayers, and even fragments of hymns echoing through empty hallways and the nave. These sounds are subtle, often just on the edge of perception, yet their presence is undeniable to those who experience them. Some hear the rhythmic cadence of a choir that existed decades ago, while others detect the soft murmur of solitary prayer. These auditory experiences frequently accompany sightings of shadowy figures, creating an immersive atmosphere where the past seems vividly alive. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena fosters an experience that is simultaneously eerie and profoundly moving, suggesting that the church remains alive with spiritual energy and the echoes of devotion. One particularly striking account comes from a visitor who remained after evening mass to light candles and pray in quiet reflection. As he moved down the central aisle, he noticed faint, human-shaped figures kneeling near the altar and along the pews. At that moment, a sudden tolling of the bells rang out from the tower, reverberating across the empty streets of Lafayette. When he turned to follow the figures, they vanished into the shadows, leaving only the faint sound of whispered chants and a lingering chill in the air. He described the experience as both unnerving and deeply moving, a reminder that Our Lady of Lourdes is a place where the devotion of generations continues to inhabit the sacred space, bridging the living and the spiritual. The historical significance of the church helps to explain the prevalence of these phenomena. Established in the 19th century, Our Lady of Lourdes has been central to countless ceremonies, including baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses. Each event carries deep emotional and spiritual resonance, leaving a lasting imprint on the building and those who worship within it. Paranormal researchers suggest that locations with extensive histories of spiritual devotion often accumulate residual energy, which can manifest as apparitions, spontaneous sounds, or environmental anomalies, such as sudden drops in temperature or gusts of cold air. At Our Lady of Lourdes, the combination of historical depth, architectural design, and the continuous presence of devotion provides the conditions for these unexplained occurrences to manifest repeatedly over time. Investigations into the church's hauntings have occasionally provided subtle but intriguing evidence. Security cameras have captured fleeting, human-shaped shadows moving along the pews or near the altar, while audio devices have recorded faint chanting and whispers when the church was otherwise empty. Temperature sensors sometimes detect sudden, localized drops, particularly in areas associated with reported apparitions. While skeptics may attribute these phenomena to drafts, acoustics, or imagination, the consistency of eyewitness reports over decades lends weight to the church's reputation as a site of paranormal activity. Even in daylight, Our Lady of Lourdes exudes an atmosphere that hints at its spiritual depth. Sunlight through the stained glass casts shifting patterns across floors and pews, while the lingering scent of incense and polished wood evokes centuries of prayer and devotion. Visitors often leave with a sense of connection to the past, feeling that the faith, hope, and prayers of generations continue to inhabit the sanctuary, quietly observing, guiding, and interacting with the living. St. Edward Church in Opelousas, Louisiana, stands as a venerable symbol of faith, history, and architectural beauty. Its towering steeple, stained glass windows, and carefully carved altar have welcomed generations of parishioners seeking solace, prayer, and spiritual reflection. During the day, sunlight streams through the colorful glass, casting intricate patterns on the polished wooden pews and stone floors. The church exudes a quiet serenity, filled with the faint scent of incense and the echoes of hymns sung by past congregations. Yet, as dusk falls and the town grows silent, St. Edward reveals a side that is both mysterious and haunting. Visitors have reported shadowy figures kneeling at empty pews, church bells tolling unexpectedly, and faint whispers drifting across the nave, creating an atmosphere that is as chilling as it is sacred. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves shadowy figures appearing near the pews. Witnesses describe human-like shapes that move slowly and deliberately, kneeling or standing in silent devotion. These forms often resemble parishioners from earlier decades, dressed in old-fashioned attire, their outlines semi-transparent and ghostly. Some appear at the ends of the pews, as if engaged in private prayer, while others glide silently along the aisles toward the altar. When approached, the figures vanish without a trace, leaving behind only a lingering sense of presence. Many visitors report feeling watched, not in a threatening way, but as if the spirits are quietly maintaining their vigil over the sacred space, ensuring the church remains a place of reverence even after dark. The bell tower of St. Edward Church is another focal point of supernatural reports. Visitors and locals alike have described the church bells ringing on their own, often at unexpected hours. The deep, resonant tolling can be heard across the surrounding streets, startling those nearby. Investigations frequently find the bell mechanisms secured, yet the sounds persist without any human intervention. Some believe the spontaneous tolling is linked to the presence of lingering spiritual energy, perhaps a manifestation of devotion or a signal from the unseen realm. In several cases, the tolling of the bells coincides with sightings of shadowy figures near the pews, creating a layered and immersive experience that is difficult to explain by conventional means. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bells. Visitors report hearing faint whispers drifting across the nave, soft prayers uttered as though by unseen mouths. These whispers often come from multiple directions at once, making it difficult to locate their source. Some hear fragments of hymns or solitary chants, while others detect the quiet murmur of prayers repeated over decades. The combination of ghostly figures, unexplained bell tolling, and these whispers creates a profound and eerie atmosphere, as if the church itself is alive with the spiritual energy of those who have worshipped there for generations. One particularly memorable account comes from a parishioner who stayed late one evening to light candles and reflect in solitude. As she walked down the aisle toward the altar, she noticed a shadowy figure kneeling near a pew. The figure remained motionless, yet she could feel a presence that was deeply tangible, almost like the continuation of a prayer from another time. At that same moment, the bells tolled unexpectedly, their resonant tones echoing through the empty streets outside. When she turned to follow the figure, it vanished, leaving only the faint sound of whispers and a subtle chill in the air. She later described the experience as both unsettling and profoundly moving, a reminder that St. Edward Church is a place where devotion transcends mortality, and the line between the living and the spiritual is thin. The history of St. Edward Church provides context for these experiences. Established in the 19th century, the church has been central to countless ceremonies, including baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses. Each event carries emotional and spiritual weight, leaving a lasting imprint on both the building and those who worship within it. Paranormal researchers suggest that churches with long histories of devotion often accumulate residual energy, which can manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or environmental anomalies such as sudden drops in temperature or fleeting gusts of cold air. At St. Edward, the combination of historical significance, architectural design, and generations of devoted parishioners creates a unique environment in which these mysterious occurrences are reported consistently over time. Investigations have occasionally provided subtle yet compelling evidence. Security cameras have captured fleeting, shadowy figures moving near the pews or altar, while audio devices have recorded whispers, prayers, and even unexplained bell tolling when the church was empty. Environmental sensors sometimes detect sudden drops in temperature, particularly in areas associated with reported apparitions. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to drafts, acoustics, or imagination, the consistency and longevity of eyewitness reports point to a remarkable pattern of unexplained phenomena. Even during the daytime, the church exudes an atmosphere suggestive of its spiritual depth. Sunlight filtering through stained glass casts shifting patterns across floors and pews, while the faint scent of incense evokes centuries of prayer and devotion. Visitors often feel a sense of connection to the past, as if the faith, hopes, and prayers of generations continue to inhabit the sanctuary, quietly observing, guiding, and interacting with those present. St. Mary's Assumption Church in New Orleans is a historic landmark that embodies the city's rich religious heritage and architectural grandeur. Its towering bell tower, intricate stained glass windows, and ornate altar have welcomed generations of parishioners seeking solace, guidance, and spiritual connection. During the day, sunlight pours through the vibrant glass, illuminating the pews, polished floors, and carved wooden details with a kaleidoscope of colors. The scent of incense lingers faintly in the air, mingling with the quiet hum of prayer and the footsteps of the faithful. Yet when night falls, the church reveals a more mysterious and haunting side, drawing attention from visitors, locals, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Ghostly figures have been spotted near the bell tower, bells have been heard ringing unexpectedly, and faint chanting sometimes drifts through the empty hallways, creating an atmosphere both chilling and sacred. One of the most reported phenomena at St. Mary's Assumption is the presence of ghostly figures near the bell tower. Witnesses describe human-like shapes that appear partially translucent, often resembling clergy, nuns, or parishioners from earlier centuries. These figures are sometimes seen pacing near the base of the tower or moving silently along the pathways surrounding the church. Others have observed them standing motionless, as though waiting or observing, before vanishing into the night. Many believe these apparitions are the lingering spirits of devoted parishioners who continue to watch over the church and its congregation. The figures are generally described as calm and solemn, their presence more reverent than threatening, as if maintaining the rituals and devotion that once defined their lives. The bell tower itself is another source of eerie and unexplained activity. Visitors often report hearing the deep, resonant tolling of the bells at late hours, long after services have ended. On multiple occasions, the bells have rung without any human intervention, their sound echoing through the streets of New Orleans and startling those nearby. Investigations reveal that the bell mechanisms are usually secured and in working order. Yet the tolling persists, leading to speculation that the activity may be spiritually rather than mechanically induced. Some locals and witnesses interpret the unexplained ringing as a manifestation of devotion or a signal from the unseen world, a reminder that the church is a place where the spiritual presence of the past continues to resonate with the living. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bells. Late-night visitors and parishioners have reported hearing faint chanting, whispered prayers, or even fragments of hymns echoing through the empty sanctuary. These sounds are subtle, often difficult to locate, and appear to come from multiple directions simultaneously. Some witnesses hear the quiet recitation of old prayers, while others report the faint melody of a choir that seems to exist from another time. The combination of ghostly figures near the bell tower, spontaneous bell ringing, and ethereal chanting creates an atmosphere that blurs the boundary between the temporal and spiritual realms. Visitors frequently describe a sense of both awe and unease, a feeling that the church is alive with the energy of those who worshipped there long ago. One particularly memorable encounter involved a visitor who stayed late after a prayer service to light candles and meditate near the altar. As he walked toward the bell tower, he noticed a shadowy figure gliding silently along the pathway. The figure paused momentarily, as if acknowledging his presence, and then disappeared into the darkness. Almost simultaneously, the bells rang out without warning, their tones echoing across the deserted streets. As he continued exploring, he thought he could hear faint chanting, soft and rhythmic, drifting through the church's empty halls. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena left him with a lasting impression of the church's spiritual depth and the enduring presence of those who had devoted their lives to it. The long history of St. Mary's Assumption Church helps explain why these occurrences are so prevalent. Established in the 19th century, the church has witnessed countless ceremonies, including baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses. Each event carried immense emotional and spiritual significance, leaving traces of devotion and human energy that may linger in the building. Paranormal researchers often suggest that churches with long histories of continuous worship can accumulate residual energy, which manifests as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or environmental anomalies like sudden temperature drops, fleeting chills, or gusts of air. At St. Mary's Assumption, the combination of historical depth, architectural beauty, and centuries of devotion creates the perfect environment for these mysterious experiences to occur. Investigations have sometimes produced subtle yet compelling evidence of the unexplained. Cameras have captured shadowy shapes moving near the bell tower or along the hallways, while audio recorders have picked up faint chanting, whispers, or the spontaneous ringing of bells when the church was otherwise empty. Environmental sensors have recorded sudden drops in temperature in areas where apparitions are frequently seen, while skeptics may attribute these phenomena to drafts, acoustics, or imagination. The consistency of eyewitness accounts over decades suggests that St. Mary's Assumption Church is a site where something extraordinary persists beyond conventional explanation. Even during daylight hours, the church exudes a spiritual atmosphere that hints at the mysteries contained within its walls. Sunlight filtering through stained glass casts shifting colors across the floors and pews, while the lingering aroma of incense evokes centuries of prayer and devotion. Visitors often leave with the feeling that the faith, hopes, and prayers of generations continue to inhabit the sanctuary, quietly observing and interacting with the living. St. Anne's Church in Napoleonville, Louisiana, stands as a centuries-old testament to faith, community, and devotion. Its towering steeple, ornate altar, and stained glass windows have welcomed generations of parishioners seeking solace, spiritual guidance, and the quiet peace that only sacred spaces can provide. By day, sunlight filters through the colorful panes, illuminating the wooden pews, polished floors, and carved details with a kaleidoscope of light. The soft scent of incense and wax lingers in the air, mingling with the faint echo of prayers from earlier services. Yet when night falls and the town grows silent, St. Anne's reveals a more mysterious and unsettling side. Visitors and parishioners alike report seeing apparitions moving along the aisle, hearing the church bells ring without explanation, and feeling icy drafts in otherwise empty areas of the building. These experiences have earned the church a reputation as a place where the spiritual and physical worlds converge, leaving a lasting impression on all who enter after dark. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at St. Anne's is the appearance of ghostly figures along the aisle. Witnesses describe human-like shapes that glide silently between the pews, often pausing near the altar or kneeling in quiet devotion. These apparitions are typically semi-transparent, their forms suggesting parishioners from previous centuries. Some are seen in the act of prayer, their heads bowed, while others move slowly as though attending to unseen duties. Attempts to approach these figures often result in them vanishing into the shadows, leaving behind only a lingering chill in the air. Many who have experienced these sightings report a sense of solemnity and reverence rather than fear, feeling as if the spirits are quietly observing the church, maintaining their connection to the sacred space even after death. The church's bell tower is another source of mysterious activity. Numerous accounts describe the bells ringing spontaneously, often during the late hours when the church is empty. The deep, resonant tones echo across the town, startling those nearby. Investigations into the bell mechanisms typically find them securely locked and in perfect working order, leaving the cause of the ringing unexplained. Some believe the unexplained tolling is a manifestation of lingering spiritual energy, perhaps linked to parishioners who once rang the bells or to the faith of generations who attended the church. On multiple occasions, the tolling coincides with sightings of apparitions along the aisle, creating an immersive experience that combines both visual and auditory phenomena in a single encounter. Visitors also frequently report sudden drops in temperature and icy drafts in areas that should otherwise be still and warm. These chills often occur near the altar, along the main aisle, or near side chapels, sometimes accompanying sightings of shadowy figures. Environmental sensors occasionally confirm abrupt temperature changes, though the cause remains unexplained. These cold spots, coupled with the presence of apparitions and the spontaneous ringing of bells, contribute to an atmosphere that is simultaneously haunting and sacred, a place where the physical and spiritual worlds seem to intersect. One particularly memorable experience comes from a parishioner who stayed late after evening prayer to meditate in the quiet sanctuary. As she knelt near the altar, she noticed a shadowy figure moving along the aisle, gliding silently past the rows of empty pews. At the same moment, the church bells rang out unexpectedly, their deep tones reverberating across the darkened town. She described feeling an icy gust pass over her, though every window and door was securely closed. When she attempted to follow the figure, it vanished into the shadows, leaving only a faint whisper and a lingering sense of a presence that could not be explained. The experience left her with both awe and unease, a reminder that St. Anne's Church is a place where devotion transcends mortality and the boundaries between the living and the spiritual are thin. The historical significance of St. Anne's Church offers context for these phenomena. Established in the 1800s, the church has witnessed countless ceremonies, including baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses. Each event carries emotional and spiritual resonance, leaving an imprint not only on the building itself, but also on the lives of those who worship within it. Paranormal researchers often note that locations with long histories of dedicated worship accumulate residual energy, which can manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or environmental anomalies such as sudden temperature drops or mysterious gusts of air. At St. Anne's, the combination of history, architecture, and sustained devotion over centuries creates a fertile environment for these mysterious occurrences. Investigations have occasionally produced subtle yet compelling evidence. Security cameras have captured fleeting human-shaped shadows moving along the aisle or near the altar, while audio devices have recorded faint whispers and the spontaneous ringing of bells when the church was empty. Temperature sensors sometimes detect abrupt drops, particularly in areas associated with reported apparitions. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to drafts, acoustics, or imagination, the consistency of eyewitness accounts spanning decades points to the church's reputation as a site of extraordinary paranormal activity. Even during daylight, St. Anne's exudes an atmosphere of reverence and spiritual energy. Sunlight filtering through stained glass casts colorful patterns across floors and pews, while the faint aroma of incense evokes centuries of prayer and devotion. Visitors often leave with the feeling that the faith, hopes, and prayers of generations continue to inhabit the sanctuary, quietly observing and interacting with those who enter. St. Michael the Archangel Church in Convent, Louisiana, stands as a storied landmark, blending the rich history of the region with the solemn beauty of its architecture. The church's high vaulted ceilings, intricate stained glass windows, and meticulously carved altar have welcomed generations of parishioners seeking spiritual guidance, reflection, and peace. During the day, sunlight pours through the colored panes, casting vibrant patterns across the pews, polished floors, and wooden details, while the faint scent of incense lingers in the air. Choirs fill the sanctuary with hymns, and the quiet murmur of prayers creates an atmosphere of reverence. Yet, as night falls and the streets outside grow silent, St. Michael the Archangel reveals a more mysterious and haunting aspect. Shadowy figures of former priests and parishioners are often seen moving through the nave. Church bells toll unexpectedly, and faint whispers drift across empty corridors, creating an experience both chilling and spiritually profound. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at St. Michael the Archangel is the appearance of ghostly figures along the pews and aisles. Visitors have described seeing silhouettes of men and women dressed in period attire from decades past. Some figures resemble priests in traditional vestments, while others appear as ordinary parishioners, kneeling, walking, or quietly observing the altar. These apparitions are semi-transparent and often vanish when approached, leaving only the faint sound of footsteps or whispered prayers behind. Witnesses frequently report a sense of solemnity rather than fear, as if these spirits are continuing their devotion beyond the confines of mortal life. Many feel as though they are being observed in a gentle, reverential way. A reminder that the church as sacred space remains alive with spiritual presence long after the congregation has gone home. The church's bell tower is another focal point of unexplained activity. Numerous reports detail the tolling of bells during the late hours, long after all services and ceremonies have concluded. The deep resonant tones reverberate across the town, startling nearby residents. Investigations into the bell mechanisms often reveal no human interference. As the bells are typically secured and in working order, this unexplained ringing has led some to believe that the activity is spiritually driven, possibly a manifestation of devotion or a lingering imprint of past priests who once rang the bells for daily services. On several occasions, the tolling coincides with sightings of shadowy figures in the nave, enhancing the eerie yet reverent ambience of the church. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bells. Visitors and parishioners have reported hearing soft whispers, distant prayers, and faint chanting echoing through the empty corridors and aisles. These sounds are subtle, often seeming to originate from multiple directions at once, making it difficult to pinpoint their source. Some report hearing fragments of hymns from choir practices long past, while others hear the quiet recitation of prayers that seem to linger in the air. Combined with the visual apparitions and spontaneous bell ringing, these auditory experiences create an immersive encounter that blurs the line between the living and the spiritual, leaving witnesses with an impression that the church itself is alive with the devotion of those who have come before. One particularly memorable account comes from a late-night visitor who remained in the church after closing to light candles and meditate. As he walked down the aisle toward the altar, he noticed a shadowy figure gliding slowly between the pews. At the same moment, the bells rang unexpectedly, echoing through the silent town. A cold draft swept over him. Though all windows and doors were securely closed, he attempted to follow the figure, but it vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only a faint whisper that seemed to say a prayer for the living. The experience left him both awed and unnerved, a vivid reminder that St. Michael the Archangel is a place where devotion transcends death, and where the presence of faith lingers long after mortal life has ended. The history of St. Michael the Archangel Church provides context for the prevalence of these paranormal phenomena. Established in the 19th century, the church has hosted countless ceremonies, including baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses. Each event carries profound spiritual and emotional significance, leaving an enduring imprint on both the building and its Paranormal researchers often note that churches with long histories of continuous worship can accumulate residual energy, which may manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or sudden environmental anomalies, such as drops in temperature or fleeting gusts of cold air. At St. Michael the Archangel, the combination of history, architecture, and sustained devotion has created a unique environment in which mysterious occurrences continue to be reported consistently over time. Investigations have occasionally produced subtle evidence supporting these experiences. Cameras have captured fleeting, shadowy figures moving along the aisles or near the altar, while audio recorders have captured soft whispers, faint prayers, and spontaneous bell tolling when the church was empty. Environmental sensors have sometimes detected sudden drops in temperature, particularly in areas associated with sightings of apparitions. While skeptics may attribute these phenomena to drafts, acoustics, or imagination, the consistency and longevity of eyewitness reports suggest that St. Michael the Archangel Church is a site where something extraordinary lingers beyond ordinary explanation. Even during daylight hours, the church exudes an aura of devotion and spiritual energy. Sunlight filtering through stained glass casts colorful patterns across floors and pews, while the faint scent of incense evokes centuries of prayer. Visitors often leave with the sense that the faith, hopes, and prayers of generations continue to inhabit the sanctuary, quietly observing and interacting with the living. St. Joseph Cathedral in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is a remarkable blend of architectural elegance, historical significance, and spiritual devotion. Its towering spires, intricate stained glass windows, and elaborately carved altar have served generations of parishioners who come seeking guidance, prayer, and solace. During the day, sunlight streams through the colorful panes, casting shimmering patterns across polished floors and wooden pews. The quiet hum of prayers, the soft footsteps of visitors, and the lingering scent of incense create an atmosphere of reverence and serenity. Yet, as dusk falls and the streets outside grow silent, the cathedral reveals a more mysterious and haunting side. Visitors report ghostly figures kneeling at empty pews, bells ringing suddenly without explanation, and shadowy forms gliding silently near the altar, creating an experience that is both chilling and spiritually profound. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves the apparitions of ghostly figures along the pews and near the altar. Witnesses describe semi-transparent forms that resemble parishioners from decades past. Some appear dressed in traditional attire, kneeling in quiet prayer, or standing silently in contemplation, as if continuing their devotion long after death. Others are observed moving slowly along the aisles, passing between pews and vanishing when approached. These apparitions are typically calm, their presence solemn rather than threatening, and many who witness them describe a sense of reverence and awe, as though the spirits are quietly maintaining a vigil over the cathedral and those who worship there. The bell tower is another focal point of unexplained activity. Numerous accounts detail the cathedral bells ringing suddenly and unexpectedly, often during the late hours when no one is present. The resonant tones echo across the surrounding streets, startling nearby residents and creating a surreal atmosphere for those inside. Investigations into the mechanisms frequently reveal them to be secured, yet the tolling persists. Some speculate that the phenomenon is a spiritual manifestation, a continuation of past rituals, or a reminder that the sacred space is alive with unseen energy. On several occasions, the sudden ringing of the bells has coincided with sightings of shadowy figures near the altar, creating a layered experience of auditory and visual phenomena that leaves witnesses both awed and unsettled. Visitors have also reported hearing faint whispers, soft prayers, or the subtle hum of hymns drifting across the nave when the cathedral is empty. These sounds often seem to emanate from multiple directions at once, making it difficult to locate the source. Some hear fragments of chants or prayers from services long past, while others describe hearing the quiet murmur of voices echoing through the hallways. The combination of ghostly figures, unexplained bell tolling, and ethereal sounds produces a powerful atmosphere, as if the cathedral itself is imbued with the presence of those who have worshipped within its walls for generations. One particularly compelling account comes from a late-night visitor who remained in the cathedral after evening mass to light candles and reflect in quiet meditation. As he walked down the central aisle toward the altar, he noticed a shadowy figure kneeling at one of the empty pews. The figure remained still, its form barely distinguishable in the dim light. Almost immediately, the bells rang out unexpectedly, their deep tones resonating through the cathedral and into the surrounding streets. A cold breeze swept over him, though all doors and windows were securely closed. When he attempted to follow the figure, it disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind only a faint whisper and the lingering sense of a presence that could not be explained. The encounter left him with a mix of awe and unease, a vivid reminder that St. Joseph Cathedral is a place where devotion transcends death and where spiritual energy lingers long after the faithful have departed. The long history of St. Joseph Cathedral helps to explain the prevalence of these occurrences. Established in the 19th century, the cathedral has hosted countless ceremonies, including baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses. Each event carries profound emotional and spiritual significance, leaving a lasting imprint not only on the building but also on the lives of those who worshipped there. Paranormal researchers often note that churches with long histories of dedicated worship can accumulate residual energy, which may manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or environmental anomalies such as sudden temperature drops, fleeting gusts of cold air, or the sensation of being watched. At St. Joseph Cathedral, the combination of history, architecture, and sustained devotion over centuries has created a unique environment for these phenomena. Investigations have occasionally produced subtle yet compelling evidence. Security cameras have captured fleeting shadows moving near the altar or among the pews, while audio recorders have picked up whispers, faint prayers, and unexplained bell tolling in empty areas. Temperature sensors have sometimes detected sudden drops in areas where apparitions are frequently reported, while skeptics may attribute these experiences to drafts, acoustics, or imagination. The consistency of eyewitness reports over decades points to St. Joseph Cathedral as a location where something extraordinary lingers beyond conventional explanation. Even during daylight hours, the cathedral exudes an aura of devotion and spiritual energy. Sunlight filtering through the stained glass creates shifting patterns on the floor and pews, while the faint scent of incense evokes centuries of prayer and worship. Visitors often leave with the impression that the faith, hopes, and prayers of generations continue to inhabit the sanctuary, quietly observing and interacting with the living. St. Louis, King of France Church in New Orleans stands as a testament to centuries of faith, history, and architectural splendor. Its high vaulted ceilings, intricate stained glass windows, and ornate altar have long welcomed parishioners seeking solace, spiritual guidance, and connection with the divine. During daylight hours, sunlight streams through the colored panes, casting vibrant patterns across polished floors and wooden pews. The soft scent of incense lingers in the air, blending with the quiet murmurs of prayer and the gentle creak of floorboards beneath devoted footsteps. However, as night falls and the city's bustling streets grow silent, the church takes on a different presence, one filled with whispers of the past, shadowy figures, and unexplained sounds that have intrigued both locals and paranormal enthusiasts for decades. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at St. Louis, King of France Church involves phantom figures wandering the nave and bell tower. Witnesses have described seeing semi-transparent shapes resembling clergy, parishioners, and other figures from bygone eras moving silently along the aisles or pacing near the altar. Some apparitions appear to be in prayer, kneeling, or standing with reverent posture, while others move slowly as if attending to unseen duties within the sacred space. Attempts to approach these figures are often met with disappointment, as they vanish into shadows before direct contact is made, leaving behind only a lingering chill or the faint impression of presence. Many who encounter these apparitions report feeling awe rather than fear, sensing that the spirits are devotedly watching over the church, maintaining a connection to its ongoing rituals and history. The church's bell tower is a central feature of its mysterious reputation. Numerous accounts describe the bells ringing spontaneously, particularly on stormy nights. These sudden tolls reverberate across the surrounding streets, startling those nearby and creating an eerie, almost otherworldly atmosphere. Investigations often reveal the bell mechanisms are secured and functioning normally. Yet the ringing continues without any apparent explanation. Some locals and paranormal enthusiasts speculate that the phenomenon is spiritually driven, perhaps a manifestation of past priests or devoted parishioners, whose devotion lingers, a reminder that St. Louis, King of France Church remains a living space for unseen activity. On several occasions, the tolling of the bells coincides with sightings of shadowy figures in the nave, merging visual and auditory experiences into one haunting encounter. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the bells. Visitors frequently report hearing whispered prayers, soft chants, or faint hymns echoing through the empty church. These sounds often appear to originate from multiple directions, sometimes seeming to fill the entire nave or drift down the corridors leading from the altar. Some have described hearing prayers in languages no longer commonly spoken, fragments of chants that seem to belong to services from centuries past. The combination of phantom figures, spontaneously ringing bells, and whispered prayers creates a layered atmosphere of spiritual presence, suggesting that the church itself is imbued with the devotion and faith of generations who have worshipped there. One particularly memorable encounter involved a late-night visitor who remained after the evening service to light candles and meditate near the altar. As she moved down the nave, she saw a shadowy figure gliding slowly past the pews. The figure paused briefly, almost as if acknowledging her presence, before continuing toward the bell tower. At that exact moment, the church bells rang unexpectedly, their deep tones echoing across the quiet streets of New Orleans. A cold draft swept through the sanctuary, though the doors and windows were securely closed. When she attempted to follow the figure, it vanished, leaving behind only a faint murmur of prayer. The experience left her with a profound sense of connection to the church's past, and a lasting impression that the sacred space was alive with unseen devotion. The rich history of St. Louis, King of France Church provides context for these mysterious occurrences. Established in the 18th century, the church has witnessed countless ceremonies, baptisms, weddings, funerals, and daily masses, all events charged with deep spiritual and emotional significance. Paranormal researchers often suggest that churches with extensive histories of continuous worship accumulate residual energy. This energy can manifest as apparitions, unexplained sounds, or environmental anomalies, such as sudden temperature drops or fleeting gusts of cold air. At St. Louis, King of France, the combination of historical depth, architectural grandeur, and centuries of devotion creates a setting in which such phenomena are consistently reported. Investigations into the church's haunted reputation have occasionally produced subtle but compelling evidence. Cameras have captured fleeting shadows moving near the altar or along the pews, while audio recordings have picked up faint prayers, whispers, or the unexpected ringing of bells when no one is present. Environmental sensors have detected abrupt drops in temperature near areas where apparitions are most frequently seen. While skeptics may argue these events can be explained by acoustics, drafts, or imagination, the consistency and longevity of eyewitness accounts suggest that St. Louis, King of France Church remains a site of enduring paranormal activity. Even during daylight, the church exudes a sense of sacred energy that hints at the mysteries within. Sunlight streaming through stained glass creates constantly shifting patterns on the floors and pews, while the lingering scent of incense evokes centuries of devotion. Visitors often leave with the impression that the faith, prayers, and hopes of generations continue to inhabit the sanctuary, quietly observing and interacting with the living. You've wandered through silent chapels, shadowed aisles, and empty bell towers. You've heard bells toll when no one is near, glimpsed figures that vanish when approached, and felt the weight of unseen eyes. Louisiana's haunted churches are more than sacred spaces. They are homes to restless spirits, ancient grief, and stories that refuse to fade. Next time you visit a church after dark, remember, some prayers never end, and some bells never stop ringing. Until next time, my night wanderers, keep your candles close, your footsteps gentle, and your courage steady. Good night.